I live in a world where, after the wars, there are barely any men left. Now, for every man, there are 5 women, and the government gives out wives for money. I'm a blind beggar, barely able to feed myself. But when the last girl fell to her knees in front of me and whispered,
"Please, take me. If you walk away, my father will kill me,"
I couldn't take it anymore. I simply took her hand and walked away. That's how I got my first wife. And that was only the beginning. Guys, if you haven't seen the previous parts, you'll find the links in the description and the pinned comment. Now, let's get to the story. In the previous part, Qingxiu coldly executed Kim Guangsu, reminding him that he had only promised an interrogation, not mercy. Leaving the dungeon, he clearly understood that his score with Goguryeo was not settled and that war was inevitable. On his way home, he encountered the midwives whom the second madam had arranged to stay in the residence in advance for his wife. In the garden, he saw Su Xiaochun surrounded by servants, gently caressing her belly and humming a tune. She greeted him happily, and he realized that, at this moment, nothing was more important than his family and the imminent birth of their child. Did the midwife mention when you'll give birth? Maybe this month, before winter sets in? I feel like the baby's been getting more and more restless lately. Su Xiaochun gently stroked her belly, her eyes full of affection. In that case, a few days before you're due, I'll inform His Majesty that I won't be attending court. We can talk about state affairs again once you and our child are safe and well. Su Xiaochun was slightly startled, looking at Qingxiu in surprise. Husband, that's not really necessary. Qingxiu shook his head slightly. No need to say more. My mind is made up. Besides, I've worried enough for His Majesty lately. This is just a small request. Su Xiaochun didn't say anything more, only nodded gently. Then she leaned softly into Qingxiu's arms. Husband, why don't we think about what name to give the baby once it's born? This question truly stumped Qingxiu. It was his first time being a father, and naming a child was an even newer challenge. It would really take some careful thought. Lately, the salt merchants and the envoys from Goguryeo had taken up much of his energy, so he hadn't had the time to think about this matter in detail. In the next few days, I'll stay in the prince's mansion and keep you company. We can think about it together. Qingxiu had already decided to neglect the other wives for now. After all, the baby came first. All right. But by then, the other sisters will secretly start complaining about me again, Su Xiaochun said with a light laugh, covering her mouth. 3 days later. A convoy from Chang'an City, loaded with a large amount of refined salt, entered Shandong's borders. Recently, Chang'an had finally produced a surplus of refined salt, enough to be sold to Shandong. The court had even widely advertised this in advance, so word had already spread before the convoy entered Shandong. The common people, who had been clinging to their money pouches for so long, finally breathed a sigh of relief. They could finally buy refined salt. The merchants leading the convoy were already making joyful calculations in their minds as they approached Shandong. We'll sell out all this refined salt within 3 days. 3 days? That's too long. I say 1 day at most. After this run, I'm going to rest for half a year in comfort. You fool, such a good chance to get rich and you're thinking about resting instead of making more money. Laughing and talking, they urged their horses forward. But as they wound around a rugged path at the foot of a mountain, one of the wagons, which had been bumping along, suddenly came to a halt. What's going on? The leader of the convoy, Chen, jumped down from his wagon and went ahead to see. A few drivers stood there, staring at each other in dismay. The narrow road ahead, barely wide enough for a single wagon, was blocked by a pile of stones stacked 2 men high. Which bastard is so shameless as to block the road like this? Doesn't this delay us making money? Chen cursed furiously. What are you waiting for? Everyone get down and start moving these rocks. Without waiting for a response, he went forward to pick up a stone himself. But the next moment, a sharp, piercing scream rang out, followed by the shouts of the drivers. The sudden noise startled the birds in the forest into flight. The drivers and merchants rushed forward, only to freeze in terror. Chen hand had been nailed to a stone by an arrow, veins bulging from the pain. Before anyone could react, men armed with bows and blades appeared at the top of both slopes flanking the narrow road, their expressions filled with ill intent. Bandits! Someone shouted in panic, and the robbers burst into loud, mocking laughter. Entering Shandong without paying tribute to us? You must be blind. The bandit leader, holding a bow, grinned wickedly at Chen weakening cries. That arrow had come from him. We're just passing through and may have offended you unintentionally, please. Chen tried to beg, but before he could finish, the leader loosed another arrow straight through his throat. This time I'll forgive you. Next life, be more careful. Boys, take the goods. At the order, The bandits cheered and charged downhill, surrounding the convoy completely. The merchants and drivers huddled together in terror, leaderless and unsure what to do. One bandit tore open a sack of salt, grabbed a handful, and presented it to the leader. All top-quality refined salt, probably finer than what the officials eat. The leader pinched a bit, tasted it, and smirked coldly. These lords from Chang'an sure know how to enjoy life. Even their scraps are enough to stuff us full. A head driver cautiously stepped forward. Hero, you know this is the imperial convoy, why? The leader shot him a glance so fierce it nearly made him collapse on the spot. We understand the rules. You take your share, then let us through, all right? All right. Of course. The leader laughed, but his eyes suddenly flashed with killing intent. He drew his blade and slashed the driver across the chest. The man fell twitching without even a scream. Spare us, hero. Spare us. The others fell to their knees, sobbing in terror. It was their first time meeting bandits who robbed and killed without mercy. I know you're from Chang'an, hauling imperial salt. But truth is, your convoys are the fattest prey. If we don't rob you, what are we supposed to do, starve? The leader's words brought another round of cruel laughter from his men. They looked at the kneeling merchants without a shred of pity, kicking and punching them like livestock. Lord, if you rob us, the court won't let it go. For the sake of your stronghold, at least think it over. The merchants cried and begged, but the leader didn't care in the least. The emperor's far away. If he's so capable, he can control Shandong first before worrying about us. He shook the blood from his blade and waved his hand casually. Do it. The bandits immediately drew their weapons, eyes gleaming with malice. Then came the endless, blood-curdling screams. The narrow valley quickly filled with a crimson river. Guo Tianqing didn't even glance back. He just gave an order to the subordinate beside him. Go tell the lords that the job's done. Settle the payment quickly. The salt merchant's matter had just been wrapped up, and Li Er hadn't even had time to breathe a sigh of relief when he received Qingxiu's advance request to take a few days off during his wife's labor. Li Er was deeply envious. Qingxiu's life really was too comfortable. Almost every time one of his own children was born, he was buried under endless affairs. To have such leisurely and peaceful time to enjoy family happiness was truly a luxury for Li Er. If I could live like this for just 1 year, I'd live 10 years longer. Li Er sighed with deep emotion. Just then, another urgent report was delivered, interrupting his thoughts. Your Majesty, an urgent dispatch from Shandong. Li Er took the letter in puzzlement. Recently, Shandong had enjoyed good weather, and there had been no foreign invasions. Why would there be an urgent report? But after reading the contents carefully, he could no longer suppress the anger in his chest and slammed the letter onto the desk. Soon, Zhang Sun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and others, summoned in haste, came before him. Your Majesty, what is the matter of such urgency? Zhang Sun Wuji saw the dark expression on Li Er's face and immediately sensed trouble, not only because the emperor might fly into a rage, but also because the matter was likely serious. Urgent news from Shandong. Some days ago, the surplus refined salt from Chang'an was sent to Shandong for sale. Guess what happened? No one dared interrupt, though they could vaguely guess what had occurred. Li Er clenched the letter in his hand. It was robbed by bandits halfway. And not only that, they killed every merchant and driver in the convoy. The ministers looked at each other, reading shock in one another's eyes. This was no ordinary bandit attack, it was the imperial salt convoy under court hire. And normally, bandits might take half and leave half, and rarely killed people outright. To take all the money and goods was a direct challenge to imperial authority. Since the founding of the dynasty, no bandit gang had dared be so brazen. Your Majesty, this must be handled at once. Those bandits must be severely punished and executed, or the consequences will be endless. Xiao Yu quickly advised. By consequences, he did not mean the bandits themselves, but the impact on the court's prestige. If the court did not act quickly, more bandits would be emboldened. This budding trouble had to be crushed fast. Of course these scoundrels must be wiped out, but do you think this matter is as simple as it looks? Li Er said angrily. He didn't need to explain further, everyone could guess. Bandits normally avoided imperial convoys, yet they had chosen this moment to strike at an imperial salt shipment. Who else could be behind it but the Shandong salt merchants colluding together? To seize control of the salt trade from the court, they had dared to commit such a reckless act. Shandong salt merchants are far too arrogant. At this rate, they might even collude with Goguryeo to invade Tang territory. Zhang Sun Wuji lashed out angrily, his heart pounding. He himself had been a key figure in the salt policy. If he became a target for assassination by these merchants, he had no confidence he could fend them off like Qingxiu. Arrange the bandit suppression at once. Even if they run far, we must root them out completely. If you can capture any alive, do so, interrogate thoroughly. Everyone you find must be executed. Li Er had dropped all previous hesitation. It was time to confront the merchants directly. If they weren't dealt with soon, they could become a grave threat. This time, he was determined to eliminate them all at any cost. The problem was even more complicated than Li Er imagined. The robbery had been deliberately and quickly spread by Shandong's salt merchants. At the same time, they spread word that banditry was becoming worse, and that the next salt convoy would likely be attacked too. This instantly killed any thought among the people of buying refined salt in the short term. They truly had no choice. The salt merchants seized the opportunity to raise the price of black salt, already expensive, by several times, making life unbearable for the people. After this chain of moves, even the dullest person knew who was behind it all. But the court had no way to act. They had no solid evidence against the merchants. And by the time troops arrived, the bandits were long gone without a trace. Although Qingxiu had been staying home recently, he was not deaf to outside events. He had even known about the convoy's attack earlier than Li Er. And as for the salt merchants' follow-up moves, he had predicted them all. They had laid all this groundwork for exactly this outcome. Now the court must be in total chaos, Qingxiu thought, easily picturing how dark Li Er's face must be these days. Just then, Lang Yuchan and others hurried back to the Duke's mansion, all with worried expressions. What do we do now? Business can't go on. This came too suddenly, we must be careful when going out. Qingxiu was puzzled. At this time of day, Lang Yuchan should have been busy at the restaurant. Why had she come back so early? Husband. Seeing Qingxiu, Lang Yuchan rushed over, full of anxiety. When you go out these days, you must be careful. There's an outbreak of malaria in Chang'an, and no one knows when it started. Yes, when Sister Yuchan opened the restaurant today, she found the nearby clinics packed with people. So many have caught malaria that she quickly shut the restaurant and came home. That's right, even the medicine at the clinics is sold out. Lu Yunyan and Zhang Sun Pingting chimed in, looking clearly worried. Qingxiu thought for a moment. This was the change from autumn to winter, and colds and flu were normal. Then stay in for a few days. Don't worry too much, it's just a chill, it will pass soon. Husband, it's not that simple. Many of those infected have vomiting, diarrhea, are coughing blood without stop, and even children aren't spared. In fact, in the past 2 days, quite a few in the villages outside Chang'an have died. Coffins are even sold out. Qingxiu was shocked. He stared at Lang Yuchan in disbelief. Is this true? It's only been a few days. If so, this malaria was far from being just a simple flu. He thought about the poor medical conditions of this era and the many unhealthy living environments. A faint sense of unease rose in his heart. Husband, how could this be false? The restaurant's business has stopped. When have I ever joked about such things? Li Yuchan still felt lingering fear as she recalled it. Qingxiu immediately picked up his staff. Erguzi, come with me for a trip. And, unless it's absolutely necessary, no one in the residence is to go out in the near future. Be on high alert. Husband, I'll go with you. Seeing Qingxiu's face grow stern, Li Yuchan quickly spoke up. She also wanted to share some of his worries. No need. You stay at home. Not just you, none of the wives should go out lightly for now, especially those around Xiaochun. All right. Seeing him like this, Li Yuchan could only agree. The fearfulness of malaria needed no explanation. If this outbreak developed into a large-scale epidemic, then the streets of Chang'an, usually bustling with endless traffic, were now unusually quiet. Most shops were closed, and the people who passed by all looked sickly, with painful coughs sounding again and again. They clutched small packets of medicine and hurried home. Some, while walking, suddenly collapsed to the ground. Qingxiu and Erguzi both wore gauze masks over their faces. At first, Erguzi doubted whether this thing was useful, but when he saw someone collapse on the ground and vomit fresh blood in pain, he quickly tightened the cloth around his face. This malaria is far more terrifying than an ordinary chill. Looking at the symptoms of these people, Qingxiu immediately understood, this was a bacterial infection, completely different from a cold. The herbs they bought from the pharmacies were almost useless. Just then, a few guards with grim expressions hurried past. Recognizing Qingxiu, they quickly saluted. Where is the source of this malaria? Where was it first found? Qingxiu asked them at once. Seems, it was in Xiaoshang village, north of the city. First we heard some people there had died, then more and more cases spread. Yes. That was 10 days ago. Then 3 days ago, there were even cases inside Chang'an City. Xiaoshang village was downstream of the Heyuanlu Jing River in Chang'an. Qingxiu had passed by once and remembered it clearly, though not fondly. The river there was full of garbage and sewage dumped by upstream residents, filthy and stinking. When villagers fetched water, they could only try to choose spots that looked cleaner, but it was pointless. If the upstream was polluted like that, how could the downstream have clean water? Let's go back, this is no small problem. Qingxiu said no more, leading Erguzi straight back to the Duke's mansion. The trouble with the salt merchants and the malaria outbreak were now tangled together. He could imagine Li Er's headache. At the same time, in the palace, after hearing the latest infection and death counts from the malaria outbreak, Li Er collapsed weakly into his chair. So many dead already? In just a few days? The eunuch beside him didn't dare say much, only giving an awkward smile and replying, "Your Majesty, this is only the record from 3 days ago. If we count yesterday's." He didn't dare continue. Li Er's face was full of bitterness. From past experience, there were always warnings before a great plague. After a natural disaster or a man-made calamity came, an epidemic would often follow. But this time, the malaria had appeared without any warning at all, and it was striking people down with terrifying speed. The number of deaths was even more? This is far too strange. Could it be that because I lack virtue, heaven is angry and the people resent me, so it has sent down this disaster as a warning? Li Er was filled with fear. Thinking of the idea of heaven and man responding to each other, he became even more convinced. When he took the throne, he killed his brother and forced his father aside, spilling blood at the Xuanwu Gate. And now, with the salt merchant and bandit affairs stirring unrest among the people, the Tang dynasty had still not fully recovered from the exhaustion of its founding. Thinking of the fate of the Sui dynasty, Li Er could no longer sit still. He had fought through blood to build the Tang. Now the world was finally at peace and moving toward stability. He could not accept a fate like the Sui, rising quickly, only to be destroyed just as fast. If it is truly my lack of virtue and ability, then let this punishment fall on me alone. Li Er let out a long sigh. Your Majesty, please take your meal first, the attending eunuch said with some concern. No need. Tell the imperial kitchen not to prepare food for me. Li Er's expression was resolute. Not just today, for the next 3 days, I will not eat a single grain of rice. If this truly was heaven's way of warning and punishing him, then he must punish himself, to calm heaven's anger and stop the suffering of the people. Your Majesty? The eunuch was stunned. Not eating for 3 days, wasn't that courting death? My mind is made up. Li Er waved for the eunuch to withdraw, then lowered his head and continued focusing entirely on reviewing official documents. Within just 1 day, news of Li Er's fasting had spread throughout Chang'an. The common people were deeply moved. They had not expected the emperor to truly take the disaster upon himself alone. With the emperor's heart like this, how can our Tang dynasty not be prosperous for 1,000 years? I think His Majesty is going too far. What do you know? If this malaria hadn't come so fiercely, His Majesty wouldn't be so troubled. But it really is strange, how exactly did this malaria appear? At first, the high-ranking nobles didn't care much, unlike the moved commoners. They thought Li Er was only putting on a show. But when they heard he intended to fast for 3 days straight, they realized he was serious. This immediately filled many officials in high positions with guilt. In the face of great danger, the emperor was even more cautious and vigilant than they were. Truly wise and heroic. Inspired by Li Er, while no one fasted for 3 days like he did, they all began living more simply. Their daily consumption was no longer as extravagant as before. They led by example with frugality. Of course, even so, the malaria in Chang'an did not lessen. Day by day, it only grew more severe. Under the combined strain on his body and mind, Li Er became more and more gaunt. Before the 3 days of fasting were up, he was already close to collapsing. I didn't think His Majesty would lead by example like this. Fasting for 3 days is no different from risking his life. Zhang Sun Pingting was stunned when she heard Qingxiu mention it. The emperor is no ordinary ruler. Qingxiu didn't need to say more. This only made him respect Li Er even more. To bear the shame of the nation for the sake of the realm. To take upon himself the nation's ill fate, that is the way of the true Son of Heaven. Li Er truly deserved his future title of Heavenly Khan. Of course, Qingxiu knew this was nothing more than Li Er moving himself emotionally. Even if he starved himself to death, malaria would still spread just the same. Where was there any heaven's punishment or heaven and man responding to each other in this? Looks like the Duke of Qing will have to go help him again. Before Qingxiu could set out, another shocking piece of news spread through all of Chang'an. Li Er had issued a self-reproach edict. He even called upon all the citizens to come before the imperial city to hear it read aloud. This was getting more and more interesting. As a seasoned spectator, Qingxiu certainly wouldn't miss such a fine show. He immediately called his household to follow him to the gates of the imperial city. The city gates stood wide open, and Li Er sat high upon the wall. His face was extremely gaunt, This was the result of 3 days of fasting. Even though the autumn wind on the wall was biting cold, he wore thin clothing, stubbornly enduring the chill. "Your Majesty, you should put on more clothes. You haven't eaten for so long, how can you withstand this wind? Your Majesty should take care of your body, only if you are healthy can the realm be governed well. Your Majesty, please don't act out of stubbornness." Li Er ignored the voices behind him, only saying faintly, "When I rode to war on all sides, the climates I faced were far harsher than this, and there was no malaria troubling us. If I could endure then, why can't I endure now?" The crowd stared at Li Shimon's back in awe, no longer speaking to persuade him. They simply stood with him, silently enduring the wind. Below the wall, the people stared in disbelief at the thinly dressed Li Er. The fear and unrest caused by malaria now finally began to gather into unity. Qingxiu looked at Li Er's extremely withered figure and knew this time he was serious. A eunuch came to Li Er's side, unrolling the self-reproach edict that Li Er had personally written, and read aloud. "Since I ascended the throne, I have accomplished nothing, and instead provoked constant wars on all borders, first the Turks' advance, then the troubles stirred by envoys of various states." In the edict, Li Er criticized nearly every matter he had handled since taking the throne. Even things he had done right, if he now thought them improper, he mentioned them all. Almost comparing himself to the Sui Emperor Yang. Qingxiu yawned. Unlike the citizens who were moved to tears, he felt it was just a waste of time. Gathering such a crowd only made it easier for malaria to spread. "Now heaven has sent down its wrath because I alone lack virtue and ability. I will hold a court sacrifice to heaven, to calm its anger." The eunuch finished reading. "Citizens, rest assured, His Majesty has sincerely reflected on himself and will sacrifice to heaven to end the malaria. Before long, the disaster will pass, and order will be restored within the passes. Your Majesty suffers for us. Thank you, Your Majesty. We are saved." The people were moved to tears, then dispersed as instructed. Only Qingxiu moved against the crowd, striding straight toward the imperial city. "Stop! This is restricted ground, the sacrifice is about to begin, unrelated persons. Oh, Duke of Qing, forgive us." The guards, recognizing Qingxiu's face, shivered and bowed quickly. "Step aside. I want to see His Majesty," Qingxiu said flatly. The guard knew Qingxiu had the right to enter freely, but looked troubled. "Duke of Qing, His Majesty is now in the city sacrificing to heaven to end the disaster, entering now would be inconvenient. Save your breath, I know what I'm doing. And besides, this sacrifice is useless. Even if he sacrifices for 10 days or half a month, it won't stop the malaria." The guard's heart leapt in fright. Probably only Qingxiu in all of Chang'an dared speak like this. "Duke of Qing, please mind your words?" "Very well, please go in. Just remember to follow the sacrificial rites." The guard carefully stepped aside, but Qingxiu ignored his latter warning and strode inside. Sacrificial rites, nonsense. Li Ji, supported by Empress Changsun, slowly climbed the heaven altar. Below, the ministers stood in proper ranks, and Li Ji too knelt and bowed to heaven. "All disasters and misfortunes shall be borne by me alone. I beg heaven not to punish the people. If heaven still refuses to calm its anger, then punish me until it is appeased." The ministers and Li Ji alike were solemn and cautious, even the guards lowered their heads, afraid to look around. Lest they somehow offend heaven. But in the middle of this solemn and grand ceremony stood Qingxiu, completely out of place. He showed none of the fear of the others. After glancing around, he only felt disdain. If you keep wasting time like this, soon there really won't be a single living soul left in Chang'an. Qingxiu sighed, sat himself down on an offering table, and watched their rites with boredom. Perhaps everyone was too absorbed. No one noticed Qingxiu's presence for the moment. Who would have thought anyone would dare wander freely into the imperial city now? Qingxiu casually picked up a peach from the offering table and took a bite. "Your Majesty, pardon my bluntness, but wasting time like this is meaningless." Li Ji, deep in devout confession to heaven, was startled out of his thoughts. Looking up, he saw Qingxiu sitting arrogantly on the offering table, eating sacrificial fruit. The crowd also turned, and at the sight of Qingxiu, they were scared out of their wits. Zhang Sun Wuji nearly fainted. What was his fine son-in-law up to now? Cheng Yaojin muttered to himself, "Good lad. What game are you playing now? Old Cheng really can't figure you out. Duke of Qing. What are you doing? Get down and apologize at once." Xiao Yu quickly spoke, then glanced around, signaling the guards to drag Qingxiu down. But the guards didn't dare touch him, they just stared, frozen in place. Xiao Yu was furious, but thought about it. Who dared lay a hand on Qingxiu? "Duke of Qing, this is no time for jokes. The people are suffering, if you further anger heaven, more disasters may come." Li Ji, in his agitation, began coughing violently. For 3 days he had eaten almost nothing, weak in body and anxious in spirit, he could hardly endure. Your Majesty. Empress Changsun patted his back gently to ease his breathing, softly advising, Duke of Qing, please don't be rude. Qingxiu tossed aside the peach pit. You think I'm disrespectful, I think you're ridiculous. All this pleading to heaven, begging for pardon, it's all useless. There's nothing in the sky. Who exactly are you asking for forgiveness? Duke of Qing, mind your words. Li Ji was so startled he nearly choked. This fellow truly dared to speak his mind. The ministers were so shocked by the scene that they didn't even dare to breathe, all staring fearfully at the sky. They were truly afraid that a bolt of lightning would strike down and punish Qingxiu. Duke of Qing. You also know that since ancient times, epidemics always have a source, it is always famine or war that causes them. But now the land is prosperous, the autumn harvest is bountiful, and there is no source at all. If this isn't heaven's will, then what is it? Li Er was so firm in his belief that even Qingxiu couldn't help feeling a headache. Still, it was understandable, given the limits of the era, and the deep influence of Dong Zhongshu's words on heaven and man responding to each other. Has your Majesty read Xuanzi? Of course. Xuanzi was a book emperors had been required to read since ancient times. Li Er had studied it thoroughly, and could even recite it backwards. Heaven operates with constant patterns, it does not exist because of Yao, nor perish because of Jie. Has your Majesty forgotten even the sentence? Li Er was startled. Vaguely, he seemed to understand something. Qingxiu stepped forward slowly, his voice firm. If we talk of heaven and man responding to each other, has there ever been a tyrant who was punished by lightning or struck dead by illness? They all fell because they oppressed the people until they had no way to live, forcing them to rise up and overthrow the tyrant. If, since ancient times, the people had been willing to suffer hardship without fighting for themselves, relying only on so-called heavenly punishment, then the tyrannical Qin would never have fallen. Does your Majesty not understand such a simple truth? These words hit like thunder in Li Er's ears, leaving him stunned, his mind blank. Indeed, the Tang's growing strength had come from his tireless work for the country, it hadn't just fallen from the sky. I have always been diligent and clear-minded in governance. If even so there would be heaven's punishment? Li Er's deeply rooted belief in heaven and man began to waver under Qingxiu's words. Then let me ask, Your Majesty, if this sacrifice fails to make the malaria subside, what will you do? Hold more sacrifices? This question completely silenced both the ministers and Li Er. It went straight to their sore spot, the fact that they had no real method to deal with malaria. If there had been a real solution, they wouldn't have been wasting time here. Fang Xianling immediately asked, Duke of Qing, in that case, do you have a solution? As soon as he spoke, everyone looked eagerly at Qingxiu, truly hoping he could think of a way. Of course, most still didn't believe he had one. Could he possibly cure tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, in Chang'an instantly? Before offering a real solution, I want to ask Your Majesty to go somewhere with me. After this trip, Your Majesty will understand exactly what the source of this illness is. Fine. If you can think of a way, I'll go with you. Li Er agreed without hesitation, about to descend the altar, when suddenly he grew dizzy, his vision went black, and he nearly fell. Your Majesty. Empress Changsun, along with the eunuchs and guards, quickly rushed to support him, preventing him from falling. It's nothing. Li Er's voice was weak. After all, he had eaten nothing for 3 days, only drinking some water to barely keep going. Even an iron body couldn't endure such hunger. No need to rush. Your Majesty should rest and eat first before we set out, Qingxiu said. All right, Duke of Qing, wait for me a moment, it won't take long. Li Er agreed, and, supported by those around him, prepared to return to the palace. Wait, Your Majesty. Qingxiu suddenly called out, pointing his staff toward the pile of offerings. What will you do with all these fine fruits and foods? Li Er was puzzled. These are offerings to heaven. Before he finished speaking, he realized what Qingxiu meant. Qingxiu smiled. Your Majesty, don't ask the ghosts and gods, ask the people. Li Er laughed in relief. You, very well. Distribute all the offerings for the ministers to enjoy. The civil and military officials were shocked, these were just now untouchable, but suddenly. What are you waiting for? His Majesty's gift. Qingxiu tossed a peach in his hand, laughing. Eat. The ministers no longer held back, stepping forward to grab offerings and eat heartily. For today's grand ceremony, many of them had not eaten or drunk since last night. They had been so hungry they could barely stand. After Li Er rested, he dismissed the ministers, keeping only a few core officials with him. Since Qingxiu didn't want to alarm the people, he told Li Er not to bring many attendants. Li Er had no objection, if Qingxiu was with him, he didn't even need guards to feel safe. Where exactly are we going? As soon as the carriage left Chang'an, Li Er asked casually. Qingxiu replied calmly, not far, Xiashang village. What? The ministers almost jumped from the carriage when they heard it. That was the most severe area of malaria. Almost no one in the entire village had escaped infection. 70% had already died, and even corpse collectors wouldn't enter. Going there now was courting death. Duke of Qing, this joke isn't funny. Taking His Majesty there now. Yes, why must it be there to explain? Better we return. Having His Majesty go personally is far too dangerous. Zhang Sun Wuji, Xiao Yu, and the others all tried to persuade him. They truly feared something might happen to Li Er, and of course they feared catching the disease themselves. Qingxiu ignored their protests and looked only at Li Er. What does your Majesty think? Li Er's expression was calm. If this matter can be solved, I'd go through fire and water. And if I alone were infected and could take on all the suffering in place of the people of Chang'an, it would be worth it. At that, no one dared voice another objection. Good. Qingxiu was satisfied. Xiashang village wasn't far. Following the river downstream, they reached it in less than half an hour. Even though Li Er had been prepared, the sight still made him gasp. The fields outside the village lay unharvested, grain rotting where it stood. Everyone who could work had died, and those who couldn't were lying at home waiting for death. At the village entrance, a few scattered corpses lay in disarray, wild dogs fighting over them. Now and then, an emaciated, pain-racked survivor might be seen walking past. With hungry wild dogs following behind, watching intently, waiting for them to collapse so they could tear the body apart. The small river flowing through the village was filled with half-rotten floating corpses. Flies swarmed thickly in the air, mixing with the stench of feces in the water, enough to make anyone retch just from looking. Not to mention the thick stench of rot drifting through the air. Ugh! The ministers, who usually stayed high in the court, had never seen such a scene. One after another couldn't help but retch, and Zhang Sun Wuji almost vomited. Li Er, however, was better off. After all, he was truly an iron-blooded emperor who had fought his way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It's too tragic. Li Er couldn't help but murmur. Xiashang village was extremely poor. If left unattended, in a short while everyone here would probably die of illness. Qingxiu ignored all this, striding to the riverbank and pointing with his staff at the filthy, foul water ahead. Your Majesty, look! Xiashang village is at the very downstream of the river. All this from upstream, Chang'an City and the surrounding villages, is garbage, wastewater, even feces, all emptied into this river. For the villagers, this is their only water source. They can only endure the filth from upstream, urine and trash, to draw water for drinking and cooking. Over time, how could they not get sick? Qingxiu sighed, even feeling it was unfair for the people here. Xiashang village is indeed the source of the malaria. As far as I know, there are even people in court cursing them and calling for punishment. But the real root of all this comes from the people of Chang'an upstream and the nearby villages. Li Er stared blankly at the filth floating on the river, and Zhang Sun Wuji and the others were speechless. If they were forced to drink this water, they'd rather take a clean blade and end it quickly. Li Er came to Qingxiu's side and looked at the corpses floating in the river, silent for a long time. Only now, with Qingxiu's reminder, did he realize how serious the consequences of letting the river be polluted were. This is no heaven's punishment at all, it's man-made disaster. This is also my fault, for not taking the river pollution seriously earlier. Otherwise, how could things have gotten to this point? Li sighed heavily. Even after learning the truth, his guilt only deepened. Your Majesty, it's the Emperor. A series of weak calls came. The remaining villagers who could still move came, leaning on canes and supporting one another, to stand before Li Er. They cowed out in panic and reverence. We did not know His Majesty would personally come. Please forgive us for failing to welcome you properly. We are not intentionally neglectful, we truly have nothing to offer His Majesty as hospitality. Please don't enter the village, lest the imperial body catch the illness. The villagers knelt in fear and respect, all already gravely ill, yet still filled with awe for Li Er. Li Er was silent for a long time, even feeling he wasn't worthy to stand before them. Your Majesty, they're waiting for your reply. Will you let them kneel here forever? Qingxiu spoke at the right time. You may go back. The court will resolve this matter as soon as possible and treat your illnesses. Li Er's voice was slightly choked as he signaled for them to leave. Thank you, Your Majesty. Luckily you came today, my grandson is almost dead from illness. Without the court's help, we truly couldn't go on. Your Majesty, we will wait for you. On the way back, everyone was heavy-hearted. Li Er was silent, not even sighing as before. Your Majesty, realizing this is not enough, you must act quickly. Otherwise, none of the nearby villages will survive, Qingxiu reminded him. Li Er nodded heavily. Duke of Qing, tell me your plan. There is a plan, but your majesty must follow my steps exactly, without missing a single part. Otherwise, the result will be half the effort with twice the delay, greatly prolonging the spread of the malaria. Li Er agreed without hesitation. Good. Speak, Duke of Qing. What's to speak of? I've already prepared it. Qingxiu took out a memorial he had long prepared and handed it to Li Er. Your Majesty, take a look. You already had a plan? Why give it to me only now? Li Er was surprised and quickly took the document. If we hadn't come to Xiasheng village, your Majesty would probably still be busy preparing the next sacrifice, wouldn't you? Qingxiu said with a faint smile. Li Er couldn't help but blush. He. Duke of Qing, you're not wrong. The memorial was very clear, listing every step in detail. As Li Er read through it, he was completely shocked by Qingxiu's ideas, so far beyond this era. Every point was a good measure against the malaria. If this can really be carried out completely, then not only this malaria. In the future, who knows how many epidemics could be prevented before they even start? After reading it, Li Er gave it the highest praise on the spot. However, there's one thing I don't understand. Li Er pointed to one of the suggestions with some doubt. This might be difficult to do, no? Rest assured, your Majesty. Tomorrow morning in court, I will give you the solution. For now, focus on carrying out my earlier ideas. With Qingxiu's promise, Li Er felt reassured. Once back at the palace, Li Er didn't even rest, he immediately had the memorial circulated among the ministers. As expected, they all strongly approved, even thinking it was the only way to solve the problem. By evening, an urgent announcement had already spread from Chang'an to the surrounding villages, ordering immediate action. This was Qingxiu's first step. Every household must dig and build a proper dry latrine, and dumping excrement into the river was forbidden. Waste was to be collected in one place to avoid multiple points of contamination. Controlling the pollution at its source was Qingxiu's first priority. Li Er even added one more rule: each household would receive 100 coins as a subsidy for building a latrine. On the other hand, if within half a month after the announcement they still hadn't built one, they would be fined 200 coins. With this reward and punishment policy, construction began the very next day. Almost every household in the surrounding villages worked eagerly, afraid to be fined for finishing late. Qingxiu even personally drove out to inspect the villages. Sure enough, after learning the true cause of the illness, no villager dared dump waste or trash into the river anymore. No wonder only Sanha village escaped the malaria. Its sanitation was done well. Jiang Yener couldn't help but praise. Back then, you told them to take sanitation seriously, now I see you had foresight. She had been worried about Sanha village, so she asked to come along. She was relieved to see there were few sick there. Qingxiu smiled lightly. Poor sanitation can kill faster than hunger. Without past lessons, people won't value it. Right, Guzi, how's the thing I told you to prepare? Hearing Qingxiu call, Guzi, who was driving, immediately replied, it's ready. I'll go get it right after. Do you want me to take you to court first? No need. Have it ready and I'll bring it in with me. Qingxiu was full of confidence, as if, in this matter, only he could solve it. Near midday, Qingxiu finally returned to Chang'an after finishing his inspection. By then, Li Er had already been waiting for a long time. He had even skipped ending the morning court session just to wait for Qingxiu's good solution. The ministers had been enduring in discomfort, and when they saw Qingxiu enter the palace, some were almost moved to tears, as if seeing a family member. Duke of Qing. If you hadn't come back soon, we would have starved to death. Behind Qingxiu followed several household guards, struggling to carry a large cylindrical bundle into the main hall. The bundle was so heavy that even these strong men were panting from the effort. Gentlemen, I've been busy all morning, it wasn't any easier than your waiting here, Qingxiu said, noticing their unhappy faces, with a touch of disdain. Wei Zheng, however, was the first to grumble. Duke of Qing. Couldn't you have finished the matter first? The whole court has been waiting just for you, this doesn't look good. Dr. Wei, just waiting a little longer and you're already complaining? If you could solve this matter with your mouth, would His Majesty still need to trouble himself so much? Qingxiu replied with biting sarcasm. You. For once, Wei Zheng, who never spared even Li Er from his blunt tongue, was left speechless. Seeing him shut down so completely, the ministers below secretly laughed. This annoying old man had finally been put in his place, they had been waiting to see this for a long time. Just as Wei Zheng's face turned red and he was about to retort, Li Er stepped in to smooth things over. Duke of Qing, this matter is important. Do you remember the trouble I mentioned before? Of course. In Qingxiu's memorial, he had written that besides collecting excrement, people should avoid drawing water from the river. Otherwise, even if the source was cleaned, downstream areas would still see mass illness. The solution was for every household to dig its own well to separate drinking water from the river supply, avoiding contamination and making it easier for residents to fetch water. But here lay the biggest problem. How to dig the wells. In areas with groundwater, a well required digging dozens of feet down. Using iron shovels and picks was time-consuming and exhausting. One well could take over a dozen strong men half a month to finish. The cost was so high that only a few wealthy households in a village could afford it. Ordinary people simply couldn't bear the expense, hence why the people of Xiasheng endured drinking filthy water. This was what most troubled Li Er. How could he possibly provide wells for every household in every village within 100 li of Chang'an? Even conscripting labor would be an enormous undertaking. And solving this was exactly what Qingxiu had promised to do. Duke of Qing, what method are you talking about? Li Er looked expectantly at the bundle the strong men had brought in. Open it. Qingxiu gestured, and the guards unwrapped the package. A huge, oddly shaped iron column was revealed before everyone's eyes. This was the large drill Qingxiu had ordered from the Works Bureau, made according to his own designs. If they wanted to dig wells while saving as much manpower and material as possible, they would have to use tools like this. This is your solution? You're saying this thing can dig wells? Li Er asked, puzzled as he stared at the 3-meter-long drill. How could such a thing dig a well? With this, only 2 or 3 people working together can dig a well in just 10 days. Though Qingxiu spoke confidently, most people still doubted it. It didn't look like a digging tool at all. But these frogs at the bottom of the well were about to be proven wrong. Duke of Qing, why not give us a demonstration? Of course. I've already chosen a spot, Your Majesty, please follow me. He had already picked a place in the imperial city likely to have a water source. The ministers gathered, curious to see how this thing could actually produce water. With Li Er's approval, Qingxiu ordered his guards to prepare to dig. They dismantled the 3-meter drill into sections, connecting them at the end with a cross-shaped lever. While the guards worked, the watching ministers whispered among themselves. Is Duke of Qing just putting on a show? It really doesn't look like a digging tool. His Majesty shouldn't trust him. If nothing comes of this, we'll have wasted a whole morning. They spoke quietly, but Qingxiu's sharp hearing caught every word. He didn't care. These people had no idea what a powerful digging tool they were looking at. 2 men lifted the drill, aimed it at the ground, and, on a signal, began turning the lever. After breaking through the surface, the drill's special design began cutting and penetrating the soil. The ministers, seeing the men struggle at first, felt even more convinced that Qingxiu was bluffing. But as the drill went deeper, the soil loosened, and the turning became faster and easier. By the end, the 2 men were almost just pushing it along with little effort. In just a short time, the 7 to 8 foot long drill was fully buried in the ground. The guards smoothly removed the lever, added another drill section, and continued down. Soon, the soil pulled up by the drill was piled into a mound, and the speed was astonishing. In less than half an hour, 2 men had done what dozens could not finish in a day. All right, that's enough. I've seen enough. Li Er could not hide his excitement, his hands rubbed together involuntarily. With this tool, the court could send just a few strong men with drills to each village and dig wells for every household, saving hundreds of times the manpower and resources he had imagined. Every home could have a well in at most half a year. Duke of Qing, you've done wonderfully. You've truly helped me greatly. Li Er was overjoyed. Please give the drill's manufacturing process to the court workshops so we can make as many as possible. To his surprise, Qingxiu only smiled and shook his head. Your Majesty, I don't recall promising to give the method for making this drill to the court. I only promised to help you solve the problem. Li Er froze, his smile turning stiff. Of course, Qingxiu was going to name his price. Duke of Qing, being able to create such a tool to solve the well digging problem is indeed a great help to me. No reward would be too much. Qingxiu smiled. Li Er knew him well indeed. Qingxiu did not intend to demand too much, but he would not miss the chance to set his conditions. Your Majesty, now that malaria is rampant, most households have spent almost all their savings on medicine. For the matter of digging wells and drawing water, let's not charge them any fees. Li Er nodded. I agree. Qingxiu slowly raised one finger. The manufacturing process of this drill is extremely complex, and it involves certain metals that are hard to smelt. If it's handed over to Your Majesty's workshops, I'm afraid they won't be able to make it. So the forging process should not be handled by the court. The smile on Li Er's face froze. In fact, what he cared about was not only the drill's design, but also the materials used to make it. He had been on the battlefield and knew weapons well. Even the best steel in the current armory could not withstand continuous wear like this drill. If swords were forged with this process, they would be divine weapons on the battlefield. Fine. I agree too, Lier said through clenched teeth. First deal with the current problem, later matters could wait. Qingxiu nodded in satisfaction. Good. And Your Majesty, don't forget to pay for the maintenance costs of these drills. The upkeep is very expensive, and without timely maintenance, they might not even last for a few wells before breaking. Lier gave a wry smile. This boy was taking all the credit while leaving him with the bill. So be it. If it can save the people from suffering, it's worth it. Lier comforted himself in his heart. Pass my order. Send people to Duke Qing's residence to collect the drills. In 3 days, begin digging wells for all villages within 100 li of Chang'an affected by malaria. Since Duke Qing has given his full help, we must finish a well for every household within a month. If manpower is lacking, report to me immediately, there must be no delay. The order was given, and the ministers responded at once, all feeling the time pressure. Even with such a miraculous well-digging tool, 1 month was still very tight, they would have to work without rest. After settling court affairs, Qingxiu returned to the Duke's residence. Urguzi, once you go back, have them speed up production. Don't slack off during this month. Since His Majesty has issued the military order, we'll make the workshop brothers work a bit harder, there will be no shortchanging them afterward. Urguzi laughed loudly. What are you talking about? Just tell us what's needed. It's only more effort. Qingxiu smiled and nodded. Suddenly, the moving carriage stopped abruptly. Urguzi cried out in surprise, then complained in annoyance, watch where you're going. Why is everyone in such a hurry? Qingxiu was nearly thrown from the carriage by the sudden stop. Using his inner sight, he saw a crowd hurrying across the street. They completely ignored the horses and carriages blocked on both sides of the road, causing the drivers to shout curses. Fortunately, Urguzi stopped in time, otherwise an old woman might have been knocked over. Didn't His Majesty say that with malaria spreading, people shouldn't go out and gather unless necessary? Urguzi looked at the crowd rushing like it was a temple fair, puzzled. Where are they going? Seeing Urguzi's confusion, Qingxiu got down from the carriage, leaning on his staff, and casually stopped a passerby. Where are you all going? Don't block my way. The man sounded anxious, but when he saw it was Qingxiu in front of him, he quickly apologized. Duke Qing, forgive me. I didn't know it was you. No matter. Just answer my question first. You don't know? Recently a very powerful Taoist appeared in Chang'an. He can drive away illness and misfortune. Everyone's rushing to ask him to remove evil and disease. Forgive me, Duke. I'm in a hurry to get a talisman for my wife's illness, I can't talk more. The man hurried off. Qingxiu watched the crowd's eager backs and gave a cold laugh. Urguzi, see? Even in chaos, some can't resist making disaster money. You head back first. I'll go see how magical this Taoist is. Qingxiu waved his staff in dismissal. All right, but be careful. Following the crowd, he arrived in the eastern district of Chang'an, where a remote open space was now surrounded by a throng, 3 and 4 layers deep. From within came bursts of cheers and admiring shouts. Taoist, you're amazing. Please make me a talisman. I want 3. I have 3 sick people at home. I was here first, don't push me. Without squeezing in, Qingxiu used his inner sight to see clearly what was happening inside. There stood an old Taoist with a green robe and a face full of gray beard. At the moment, he held a peachwood sword in one hand, gesturing with the other, eyes closed, muttering something under his breath. Suddenly, he snapped his eyes open, shouted loudly, and pulled a handful of talisman papers from his robe, throwing them into the air. All evil, begone. The floating talisman papers suddenly ignited in midair, burning to ash before touching the ground. Then the Taoist slashed the peachwood sword down onto a talisman for warding off spirits on the table before him. At once, scarlet blood welled up on the paper, soaking it completely. Only then did the Taoist, satisfied, withdraw his sword. Everyone, it's done. The dozen people crowded at the front looked eagerly at him, and after hearing this, they finally relaxed. Thank you, Taoist. Thank you for saving us. They left with many words of gratitude, and immediately another group surged forward, raising silver or strings of coins, jostling and begging the Taoist to remove illness and disaster for them. Watching carefully from the edge of the crowd, Qingxiu felt only disdain. It was the limitation of the times, these tricks that even a modern schoolchild could see through were popular here. But it was no wonder, after this plague, even the court was helpless, the medicine ineffective. Ignorant commoners could only turn to superstition for hope. Everyone, be quiet for me. The Taoist barked impatiently, and the place fell silent. I have little time today. Only those with deep enough blessings can have their illnesses driven away. The rest of you queue up and wait. If you miss today, come tomorrow. The crowd looked at each other in confusion. Taoist. How do we know who has deep enough blessings? Don't you understand? The gray-bearded Taoist stroked his beard and chuckled. Money. The more you pay, the deeper your blessings. As soon as these words left his mouth, Qingxiu couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. This old fellow had accidentally said exactly what was in his heart. The old Taoist seemed to realize that what he had just said was a bit inappropriate, and quickly added, I am not greedy for money. Do you think I keep the money I collect? It is all offered to the heavenly gods and the great golden immortals, so that I can ask them to come and drive away your illnesses and disasters. The more silver you are willing to spend, the more you can please the heavenly gods, and the deeper your blessings will be. The old Taoist rambled on, and when he saw that many people still looked troubled, he deliberately pretended to be angry. I came from Mount Zhongnan, braving wind and dew all the way, never asking for the least wealth or honor. Do you really think I am here for money when I cure illnesses and disasters for you? If you can't bear to spend money, then don't come to me, find your own way. He immediately made as if to leave, and the boy by his side hurried to play along, stepping forward to hold him back. Master. If you leave, who will save them? That's right, Taoist, please don't go. We'll pay. It was our short-sightedness. If it can cure illness, no matter how much it costs, it's worth it. The old Taoist snorted angrily. What, spend money to cure illness? You are offering to the heavenly gods so they will heal you. Yes. It's an offering. The crowd quickly corrected themselves. The boy stepped forward at just the right time. Everyone, you all know the situation now, right? Those who can offer 1 or 2 taels of silver, step forward first. At this, many people at the front of the crowd looked troubled, lowering their heads to count the bits of silver and copper coins in their hands. For most of them, this was a huge sum of money, but with illness threatening their lives, they had no other choice. One by one, they reluctantly handed over what might be an entire year's earnings to the boy in line. Those who were unwilling or simply couldn't gather enough money could only step aside in despair and wait. Master. It's quite a lot now. The boy happily counted the silver in front of him, grinning so wide it nearly reached his ears. The old Taoist, pretending to rest with his eyes closed, knew his act was nearly complete, so he coughed a few times and prepared to begin. Wait! Suddenly, the crowd was forcefully parted by several strong men, who respectfully escorted a person in a sedan chair, face covered with a veil, toward the Taoist's altar. This person's identity seemed extremely noble, as more than a dozen strong men guarded the sedan chair carefully until it stopped before the Taoist's table. The opportunistic Taoist could tell at a glance that this was someone of great importance, and quickly went forward with a broad smile. Greetings, my lord. You are? Our master has malaria. His body grows weaker by the day. If you can drive away the evil sickness, there will be a generous reward, the steward ordered proudly. How could I refuse? It is my honor that this lord recognizes my skills. I just don't know, what is your master's name and position? The Taoist was still thinking about whether he could cling to such a powerful figure. Don't ask so much. Just treat the illness and stop talking nonsense. The steward slammed 2 silver ingots onto the altar. First heal our master, and if he recovers, there will be even more silver. The old Taoist's eyes nearly popped out. He quickly signaled the boy to collect the money. This lord clearly has deep blessings from the heavenly immortals. I will first remove his illness and disaster. As he said this, his eyes never once left the ailing man in the sedan chair, already thinking about how to befriend him. Ugh, the man in the sedan chair gave a painful dry heave. Hurry. Clear the way. Don't delay master's ritual. The boy impatiently waved his whisk, driving the crowd back. Even if they were unwilling, they didn't dare provoke someone of such obvious status. Wait a moment. Suddenly, a voice came from outside the crowd, making everyone turn to look. The old Taoist's face instantly darkened, about to scold. But the next moment, an exclamation from the crowd nearly made his legs give out. Duke Qing. So it's Duke Qing. Is he here to pray for blessings too? Make way, let Duke Qing go first. The commoners' respect for Qingxiu was obvious. They even thought this good fortune should be given to him first. The man in the sedan chair nearly toppled out when he saw Qingxiu coming. Duke Qing. He looked up at Qingxiu, his voice extremely weak. Unable to rise and salute, he could only clasp his hands from the sedan chair. My respects. Qingxiu was unconcerned. You're already this ill, better keep lying down, Mr. Du. Though the veil hid his face from others, nothing could escape Qingxiu's inner sight. This was Du Ruhui. Qingxiu hadn't seen him at morning court. Turns out he had caught malaria. But in front of so many people, Qingxiu still gave him face and did not reveal his identity. No choice. The best doctors in Chang'an prescribe medicine that does nothing. I heard this Taoist was quite effective at removing illness and disaster, so I came to try my luck, Du Ruhui said with a weak smile. Duke Qing, are you here to pray too? You look well. Does someone in your family have the plague? Though Du Ruhui was a minister, the limits of the era meant even Li Er first thought this was caused by supernatural forces, how much more so for him. Qingxiu glanced at the old Taoist, who was grinning obsequiously and bowing almost in half. If he could win over such a high-ranking person, his life would be set. I only heard someone here was driving away illness and disaster for the people, and came out of curiosity. Qingxiu smiled faintly at the Taoist. Old Taoist, you've saved so many lives, yet only taken from them what took a year or two to save up. Truly, your virtue is boundless. His words dripped with sarcasm. The Taoist found it unpleasant to hear, but forced a smile. It's nothing, take people's money and remove their disaster. Perfect. Mr. Du is a good friend of mine. You don't mind if I watch how you remove his disaster, do you? Without waiting for an answer, Qingxiu dragged the Taoist's chair over and sat down himself, gesturing for him to begin. Hee, rare for Duke Qing to take interest in my little tricks. I will certainly do my best. With a wave, he ordered his apprentice to bring the talismans and other tools. As the old Taoist explained, he would seal the illness-causing ghost in the talisman, then burn it with heavenly fire. When commoners have malaria or plague, it's caused by little ghosts. Once I trap the ghost in this talisman and slay it with one sword stroke, the illness will be cured. The old Taoist proudly stroked his beard, clearly pleased with his explanation. Qingxiu was almost falling asleep listening to him. This old fellow was making up a whole pile of nonsense, all just empty words to cover his fake tricks. Give me your talisman paper, let me take a look. Qingxiu ordered. The old Taoist dared not neglect him and quickly handed over the stack of talisman papers in his hand. Qingxiu held them, glanced over casually, chuckled softly, and then returned them. Go ahead. Yes, sir. The old Taoist immediately began pretending, writing Du Ruhui's date and hour of birth on the talisman, then closing his eyes and chanting scriptures in a showy manner. Aside from Qingxiu, everyone else couldn't help but stare wide-eyed. Du Ruhui was even more eager for the Taoist to succeed quickly. By the command of the heavenly net, evil spirits disperse. The old Taoist shouted again, then tossed the talisman into the air, glaring and yelling loudly. Everyone instinctively stepped back, expecting the talismans to ignite midair and burn to ash. But nothing happened. The talisman papers simply floated to the ground intact, not a single one caught fire. The old Taoist was stunned, muttering to himself, this makes no sense. What's going on? The crowd was equally baffled. Master! Hurry and try again. Maybe just now the great immortals weren't paying attention to your spellcasting. The boy hurriedly picked up the talismans from the ground and handed them back to his master to smooth things over. Yes. They must not have noticed before, let's try again. The old Taoist gripped the talisman papers tightly, then threw them into the air again with force. Burn for me. This time, he was so nervous he even forgot to chant the incantation. Yet just like before, the papers fell to the ground without incident. The old Taoist was once more dumbstruck. What's going on? Du Ruhui coughed violently a few times, his tone clearly impatient. Didn't you say the more money spent, the deeper the blessing? How come your ritual doesn't work at all? It must have been a mistake. Let me try again. The old Taoist was so flustered he could barely speak clearly. The boy went forward to pick up the papers again, but suddenly Qingxiu stepped forward and snatched them out of his hands. Even if you tried 10,000 more times, it still wouldn't work. He pinched the talisman papers, then flicked his fingers and threw them high into the air. This time, the talismans all burst into flames midair, to the shock of the crowd. Does Duke Qing know magic too? Incredible. Du Ruhui was stunned. I've never known you had such skills, you must truly be an immortal. Mr. Du, you really are too sick. Qingxiu looked coldly at the dumbfounded old Taoist. What magic? It's just a scam. If I can do it, you all can do it too. He walked over and took another stack of talisman papers from in front of the boy. The boy instinctively wanted to stop him, but realizing it was Duke Qing, he quickly withdrew his hand. Duke Qing. These talismans can communicate with the gods, you mustn't touch them lightly. The old Taoist rushed forward in fear to stop him, but shrank back under Qingxiu's glare. When I touched them earlier, why didn't you say they were for the gods? The old Taoist was completely silenced, standing there in panic. Duke Qing, what do you mean by this? Let him finish the ritual quickly, I still need to hurry back, Duruhue said impatiently. Mr. Du, at this point you still believe he has divine power? Qingxiu handed the stack of talismans to a young man in the crowd. Here. Do exactly what the old Taoist just did, throw these in the air. I? The young man looked terrified, clearly recalling the old Taoist's earlier talk about divine will and not daring to touch them. What are you afraid of? Whatever happens, I'll take responsibility. Even if the great immortals themselves come down, I'll say I ordered it. Qingxiu's tone was absolute. I'll try. The youth took the papers nervously. Remember, rub hard with your fingertips first, then throw them forcefully into the air. The young man followed the instructions and hurled the talismans upward. Boom! The papers burst into bright flames midair, startling the crowd into another uproar. Does this kid have divine power too? You fool! Can't you see what's going on? These talismans must be special, maybe anyone can ignite them? At that moment, the Taoist's mystical image was completely shattered. Everyone now looked at him with doubt, even the bedridden Duruhue frowned in suspicion. This might be the great immortals responding to everyone's prayers. Cold sweat poured down the Taoist's forehead as he stammered in self-defense. Nonsense! If the great immortals in heaven were really watching, they'd strike you dead with lightning for being such a fraud. Qingxiu rebuked him mercilessly. Then he turned to the crowd, pointing at the stack of talismans on the table. These papers self-ignite because they've been soaked in lamp oil and coated with phosphorus. Rub them with your fingers and the phosphorus catches fire. The old Taoist never expected Qingxiu to see through the trick instantly. He was completely unable to argue. But he still wondered why he hadn't been able to ignite them earlier. Qingxiu read his mind and sneered. I rubbed a little water on my fingers earlier. Once the papers are wet, the phosphorus can't ignite. The crowd suddenly understood. They had been completely fooled. Some of them had even given this old man their savings from 1 or 2 years of hard work. The more they thought about it, the angrier they got, glaring at the Taoist with the urge to skin him alive. Everyone, no need to be like this. I truly am a Taoist from Mount Zhongnan. Just now I was also praying for you. I only used a small trick so you could see something, at least for peace of mind. The old Taoist, drenched in sweat, stumbled back, almost falling over. Wait! Duruhue suddenly spoke. The talisman trick is clear, but what about when he used the peachwood sword to slash the paper and fresh blood came out? Hearing this, the crowd froze again, remembering the paper had indeed been soaked with bright red liquid. A wave of unease swept over them, and they all turned to Qingxiu for an explanation. That's even simpler. Qingxiu glared at the Taoist, who quickly bowed his head and stepped aside. Give me the peachwood sword. The old Taoist pleaded in a low voice. Duke Qing, please, leave me some dignity. I'm only making a hard living. A hard living? You dare call it that? The people you cheat work 1,000 times harder for their money than you do. Qingxiu snatched the sword from him and raised it high for all to see. This trick is even simpler, watch closely. He twisted the handle casually, and from the sword tip sprayed a bright red liquid, just like blood. Clearly, there was a small mechanism inside the sword, already filled with cinnabar water, the so-called ghost blood the old Taoist mentioned. The old man was completely deflated, stumbling and leaning on his boy attendant just to keep from falling. Seeing the furious looks in the crowd's eyes, he nearly burst into tears. Give back the money. Give it back? Old thing, you even swindled our life-saving money. Are you even human? If you don't return it, I'll beat you to death. The boy, frightened to tears, hurriedly threw the money bag onto the table. I'm just a little beggar begging along the road. It was him who forced me to join in the scam. I didn't know anything. The crowd was about to surge forward to grab their money back, but Qingxiu moved first, taking possession of it. He was so fast it was almost invisible. Before anyone could react, the heavy bag of silver and copper coins was in Qingxiu's hands. Don't misunderstand, everyone. I will return this money to you later. Not only yours, but also the money of those who left earlier after being cheated. It must be returned to them too. Qingxiu knew that if everyone rushed forward to grab it themselves, it would turn into a chaotic mess, and many might not get their own money back. It would be snatched away by others. We'll follow Duke Qing's arrangements. Naturally, the people trusted Qingxiu completely. Ugh! Duruhue suddenly began retching violently, and his servant quickly stepped forward to help him catch his breath. Already weak, Duruhue couldn't even speak, but Qingxiu could still sense the disappointment hidden behind the veil on his face. He didn't care much about the money lost. He was distressed that a little hope had just been lit and was now extinguished again. In recent days, Duruhue had heard that many people had died of malaria, so he was anxious and worried he would end up the same. Mr. Du, superstition cannot be trusted. You shouldn't have had such high hopes from the start. Qingxiu sighed and tried to comfort him. There's nothing I can do, let's just hope I live to get through this calamity. He smiled bitterly and told the porters to lift his sedan, but Qingxiu suddenly called out to him. Mr. Du, when you return, do not drink cold water. Remember, boil water before drinking it, this will help your illness greatly. This was the fourth suggestion Qingxiu had made to Li Er, tell the people not to drink water drawn directly from wells, but to boil it first. Whether they drank it warm or cooled afterward didn't matter. Given the Tang dynasty's conditions, this was the only practical and effective method of disinfection for the people. I did hear His Majesty's order a few days ago, but what's the mystery behind this? Doesn't cold water and hot water taste the same? Du Ruhui was puzzled. Qingxiu patted his head. There was no way to explain germs, parasites, and other concepts so obvious in later ages to someone living in this era. But recalling how the common people had just been fooled by the Taoist, he suddenly had an idea. It's simple. Illness belongs to yin, and fire belongs to yang. Boiling water means infusing it with yang energy. When a patient drinks it, the yang in the water can counter the yin in the body, curing the illness. He decided to use their superstitions to help correct their living habits. So that's it. I never expected Duke Qing to understand such profound theories. Du Ruhui immediately looked at him with new respect. Ahem. I've dabbled in it here and there. Not only Du Ruhui, but the commoners present were also convinced by his explanation. Duke Qing is truly learned. Even His Majesty listens to Duke Qing's advice. If we'd known earlier, why would we have listened to that Taoist's nonsense? Duke Qing has real methods. Duke Qing, do you have a way to rid us of our illness? Yes. Many in my household have fallen sick. If you can drive the illness away, we'll accept any request. Looking at their eager, hopeful faces, Qingxiu could only feel a bit helpless. Everyone, there are no heavenly gods who will remove your illness. If you want to live, follow my advice, drink boiled water, collect your waste, and don't pollute the environment or rivers. If you do these things as best you can, the disease will naturally fade. Although Qingxiu didn't literally cure them on the spot, his words greatly encouraged them. At least now they believed there was a way to fight the epidemic, rather than just lying at home waiting to die. Soon, soldiers arrived, having heard the news, and arrested the fraudulent Taoist. The old man, trembling, had just been basking in the admiration of the people, and now in no time had become a prisoner. The contrast was too great. When their stolen money was returned, the people's gratitude to Qingxiu grew even more. If not for him, their hard-earned savings would have been lost forever. Thank you, Duke Qing. If you hadn't been here today, we wouldn't know what to do. Yes. Only Duke Qing's learning could expose this old fraud so clearly. I say Duke Qing is the one with real methods. Qingxiu didn't care for their flattery. As the soldiers escorted the old man away, he left as well. But the fraud-busting Qingxiu had just performed didn't only save the people present. When the old Taoist was making huge profits, many others inside and outside Chang'an were also planning to exploit the people's fear and respect to cheat money. After his scam was exposed, the commoners now had deep suspicions toward such superstitious tricks. Some even felt disgust. This made it hard for others to copy the Taoist scam, so they had to give it up. Evening, at the Duke's residence. As night fell, Su Xiaochun gathered all the wives in the household, saying mysteriously that she had something important to announce. Sisters, you all know malaria is rampant in Chang'an now. If you catch it, you might lose your life. The more Su Xiaochun spoke, the more worried she looked. With her pregnant belly, the other wives were all on edge. Elder sister. Please, be careful, don't get agitated. Just tell us what you need us to do. Lu Yunyan feared Su Xiaochun might harm her unborn child. Su Xiaochun sighed. Actually, it's nothing too difficult. It will just mean more work for you younger sisters. Of course, you might even be happy to do it. The wives were more confused than ever. Since our husband is often out, though it's for His Majesty and the people, given how things are outside, how can I be at ease? Li Yuchan frowned. Elder sister, are you saying you want our husband to stay home these days? That might be hard to manage. Yes, even if we tried to persuade him, it might not work. Our husband cares about this malaria outbreak even more than His Majesty does, Chang Sun Pingting agreed. That's right. Although we also worry about him, he is truly a man who handles great affairs. Su Xiaochun sounded a little dissatisfied. Silly sisters. Of course you can't make him listen if you just try to talk him out of it. Can't you change your approach, just make it so our husband can't even leave the house? Pfft. Li Yuchan was the first to catch on and couldn't help laughing. Soon Chang Sun Pingting, Lu Yunyan, and the others also smiled knowingly, though they said nothing. Seems my sisters are all very clever. Su Xiaochun was quite pleased. I don't understand what you elder sisters are talking about. Cui Yuyan, though not the youngest, was the most innocent among them. She blinked, her beautiful eyes full of confusion. Oh, come now, little sister, think about it. Li Yuchan pulled her over, her face full of teasing amusement. If we can't talk him out of it, and we can't block him from going out, how do we stop him from leaving? We just make sure he has no strength to get out of bed and go to court. As she spoke, Li Yuchan lightly lifted the two impressive curves in front of Cui Yuyan's chest. So that's what you mean. Cui Yuyan's face instantly turned bright red. When Qingxiu returned home, he was surprised to see only Su Xiaochun come to greet him. You're about to give birth, don't keep walking around like this. Be careful not to disturb the baby, he warned, worried. Su Xiaochun smiled sweetly. Husband, it's just that I haven't greeted you in person for so long, I've truly missed you. Qingxiu gently pulled her into his arms, stroking her large belly. Of course I know, you've been wrong during this time. Once the child is born, I'll make it up to you. Then I want husband to make it up to me for a whole month. Su Xiaochun's eyes lit up instantly, she hadn't been cared for by Qingxiu for 9 months. Yes, yes. A full month. Qingxiu couldn't help laughing and comforted her again. Then I won't keep you from resting, husband. I'll take you back to your room, this time I've prepared a special surprise for you. She was a little mysterious. Qingxiu was puzzled about what surprise it could be, until he opened the door. Inside, 6 stunning women with exquisite makeup and bright, alluring clothes had been waiting for him for some time. Their cheeks were flushed, and their eyes smoldered as they looked at Qingxiu. It was obvious they'd been anticipating this moment for a while. So this was the surprise Su Xiaochun had mentioned. Looks like you want to make sure I can't leave the Duke's estate tomorrow? Qingxiu said with a half-smile. Husband, you can't put it that way. Li Yuchan stepped forward at the right time, helping him undress piece by piece with great care. Before long, the room was like a raging sea, waves surging without end. Outside, Su Xiaochun, listening with flushed cheeks, was very satisfied. Husband, you'll have to work a little harder these days. When the malaria is gone, I'll be at ease letting you go out again, she muttered to herself. Her plan was simple, one night of storms and rain to completely drain his energy. That way, he'd have less mind for state affairs and would stay home, making him safer. But she was still a bit naive. The next day, when she personally came to inspect the battlefield, she found all the women collapsed on the big bed, utterly exhausted, sound asleep. It was clear last night's battle had completely drained their strength. Qingxiu, however, was nowhere to be seen. Madam, the Duke left early this morning, and he looked full of energy, not the slightest sign of tiredness. Su Xiaochun stomped her foot in frustration. She had seriously underestimated her husband's stamina. 3 feet of ice doesn't form in a day. Anyway, if we do this every night, in a few days he'll lose interest in going out, she still thought hopefully. Of course, Qingxiu didn't mind playing along with her plan. The well drilling project was going faster than Qingxiu and Li Er had expected. When manpower was short at first, Li Er even directly picked strong men from the garrison in Chang'an to go house to house, drilling day and night. Of course, the most important reason was still Qingxiu's drill bits. Without these tools, even if the men worked themselves to death, they could never make progress so quickly. One day, Qingxiu heard that drilling progress in Sanchuan village had run into trouble. The drill there had gone only a few feet before something very strange happened. The deeper they drilled, the more scalding hot gas came rushing up, so hot no one could get close. No one knew what was going on, so they sent for Qingxiu to see if he had a solution. Qingxiu found it odd. Near Chang'an, the underground layers weren't especially hard, so his drills almost never met something they couldn't penetrate. When he arrived at Sanchuan village, the village head and a captain hurried to greet him. We're in big trouble, Duke Qing. We don't know what's going on. Did we offend some god or spirit underground, and this is their way of warning us not to drill further? The village head was so panicked he was almost incoherent. I've already told you, put all that superstition out of your heads. If you really think it's ghosts or gods, then don't come to Duke Qing for help, go get a shaman to fix it. Qingxiu was annoyed at seeing them so timid. Although he understood they were limited by their time and feared the unknown, listening to this nonsense still felt like an insult to his intelligence. The old village head immediately shut his mouth. Duke Qing, please follow me. The captain led the way, and before they even reached the site, Qingxiu saw thick orange smoke shooting up into the sky. With the smoke billowing upward, the autumn chill in the village was noticeably driven away. Duke Qing, could this fog be some kind of evil spirit? Could it have something to do with the malaria spreading lately? The old village head was trembling, but before he could finish, Qingxiu shot him a glare. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Up close, he saw that half of the drill still stood above ground, but from the hole it had made, scorching steam kept pouring out, making it impossible to get near. Everyone was keeping their distance, afraid to get even a little of it on them. Having been influenced by the old village head, they all thought this was evil energy. Through the gauze covering his face, Qingxiu could faintly smell a fresh scent in the scalding steam. It was definitely not any kind of rotten odor, nor could it cause illness. If anything, it was more like the steam from boiling water. Could it be? He suddenly thought of a possibility, and excitement rose in his heart. Hiding his reaction, he called the village head over. The underground water flow here indeed has problems. It will be hard to get well water out. The old village head became anxious at once and quickly asked, "What should we do? Duke Qing, do you have any ideas? I'll make sure the villagers do their best." What ideas could I have? Besides, your village is in a shady location, with only 2 or 3 hours of sunlight in a whole day. The spot is poor to begin with. Living here long term isn't good for people. Qingxiu pretended to be troubled as he looked at the shady land hidden by hills, shaking his head. "You've noticed it too?" Sigh. "Our Sanchuan village was the last to come to farm near Chang'an. The good spots were already taken by others. Even knowing this place is shady, we had no choice, there was nowhere else to go. If the villagers hadn't been quick to claim this land back then, we'd all be living in Xiashang village now." The old village head was so anxious he almost cried. He knew it was a bad place. Little sunlight, poor harvests, cold in winter, hot in summer. The only advantage over Xiashang downstream was being upstream and not having to drink the dirty water flowing down from them. Qingxiu sighed. "The land's problems can't be fixed, I'm no immortal." Forget it. I have a kind heart, after all." He ordered the old village head to gather all the villagers. The man obeyed immediately. Within half an hour, all the few hundred people in the village had gathered. Seeing it was Duke Qing calling them, no one dared speak loudly. They waited respectfully for his instructions. "Everyone, I came today to solve the village's well drilling problem. But as it stands, even I have no way forward. I'm afraid the well project will have to be abandoned." The villagers sighed in disappointment, complaints filling their hearts about the bad luck of living in such a place where even digging a well was troublesome. The village head nervously edged forward. "Duke Qing, you just said you could help us." I wasn't finished speaking. Seeing Qingxiu's slightly impatient look, the old man quickly backed away. Qingxiu went on, "This village's location is not suitable for people to live in. How about this? I'll directly buy your houses, and you can take the silver to choose a better place to live. What do you think?" For the villagers, this should have been explosive good news. They had originally occupied unclaimed land here under the reclamation orders. If they could now take money and move somewhere better, it would be a great deal. But surprisingly, they didn't look excited. Instead, they just stared blankly at Qingxiu, as if what he said had nothing to do with them. Was I not clear enough? Qingxiu frowned, ready to repeat himself, when the village head quickly explained, "Duke Qing, you don't know, these fields, houses, even the cattle, horses, and tools, don't belong to us. We're only tenant farmers." Qingxiu understood immediately, this village was part of a noble's estate. These poor villagers farmed barren land, handing over most of their meager harvest to the landowner. They had no choice, fertile land inside the passes was already taken. Here, they at least had a thin field to work. If they left, they'd have nowhere to stand. So whether or not Qingxiu bought the land didn't matter to them, the money wouldn't be theirs, and they'd still just be paying rent to someone else. But if Duke Qing becomes the owner of this estate, we'd be more than happy. Paying rent to you, we'd gladly do it. Yes, you'd be far kinder than those other lords and princes. We just ask that when there's a disaster, you give us more time to pay the rent." At least hearing that Qingxiu might take over as the landowner put them at ease. Qingxiu felt uncomfortable seeing this. "Whose estate is Sanchuan village?" A guard answered, "It's the estate of Duke of Lu." "Duke of Lu?" "So, Ho Junji." Qingxiu realized it was quite the coincidence. But he didn't care, he intended to take this land no matter what, even if it was imperial land Li heir kept under wraps. "The well can wait. As for you," looking at the thin, sallow villagers, his tone softened. "If you want to keep farming here, I'll give you better work than farming. If you don't want to farm anymore, I'll give you compensation and allow you to leave to make a living elsewhere." The villagers hadn't expected such generosity from him, especially since they weren't even his tenants yet. They were used to arrogant, cold officials, and now this high-ranking duke treated them like this. It brought tears to many eyes. "Thank you, Duke Qing. I've always said you're a good man. If you take over this land, we'll stay here generation after generation, even be buried here. Please buy this land as soon as possible. Even if the rent's higher, we're willing to stay." They all pleaded in unison. Qingxiu noticed the old village head looking at him with tear-filled eyes. It might be silly, but it was the villagers' true feelings. They had never before felt what it was like to be treated as people by someone of high rank. Seal the well for now, don't let the heat escape. And if you want me to buy this land smoothly, keep your mouth shut. Don't tell anyone what happened today. He gave them a warning, and sure enough, everyone swore they wouldn't reveal a word. You too. Qingxiu tossed a silver ingot to the captain and left without looking back. The captain quickly wiped it clean and tucked it into his clothes. Don't worry, Duke Qing. Even without the silver, he wouldn't dare talk. If he ruined such a major matter, how could a mere captain survive the consequences? Duke of Lu's residence. Lately, court affairs had been urgent and numerous, and Hou Junji came home exhausted every day after morning court. He had just taken off his court robes when the butler came and lightly knocked on the door. Master? Hou Junji felt a bit annoyed. Handle the small matters yourselves. Or ask madam. After working half the day, he didn't want to deal with anything else. Master, it's not that we have something to decide. Duke Qing has come, specifically asking to see you. At those 3 words, Hou Junji immediately became alert. What is he looking for me for? He pricked up his ears, afraid to miss a single word. He said he wants to speak with you directly, not have a servant's pass messages. Understood, I'll go right away. Hou Junji simply went as he was, still in his court robes. He didn't want Qingxiu to wait. At this moment, Qingxiu was sitting in the main hall of the Duke of Lu's residence. Although servants had already brought tea, he didn't even glance at it. Tea of this quality wasn't fit for servants in his own residence, let alone himself. Duke Qing. Before long, Hou Junji, looking weary, came in person, still wearing his court robes. You've worked hard, just after court, and now I'm here to bother you a while. Qingxiu spoke jokingly. Not at all. What brings Duke Qing here today? If there's anything I can help with, just say the word. It's nothing troublesome. I heard the farmland and house plots in Sanchuan village are your fief. Hou Junji nodded. That's true. If Qingxiu hadn't brought it up, Hou Junji would have nearly forgotten. The yield there was so poor it was a mere drop in the bucket compared to his total revenues. Qingxiu said calmly, recently I've wanted to build a garden estate outside Chang'an, and I happen to like that plot of land. I wonder if Duke of Lu would be willing to part with it. Hou Junji found it odd, just for this small matter? That poor patch of land, if someone else came to buy it, or if Qingxiu just asked outright, he'd even be willing to give it for free as a favor. I don't mind. But that land is currently managed by my second son, and all the yields go into his account. If Duke Qing wants it, you can discuss the price with my son. At Hou Junji's order, the servants immediately summoned his second son, Hou Yuanheng. Greetings, Duke Qing. Hou Yuanheng saluted. This was his first time meeting Qingxiu. Seeing that Qingxiu looked about his own age, Hou Yuanheng couldn't help but look down on him. To be so young and already a duke is unusual, but mostly luck, I'm sure. I'm not worse than him, just less lucky. If Qingxiu had known what he was thinking, he might have burst out laughing on the spot. When Hou Yuanheng heard that Qingxiu wanted to buy the land in Sanchuan village, he was secretly overjoyed. To him, that land was a burden, little yield and occasional need to aid the villagers, with fewer and fewer farmers working it. If he could sell it now for a decent price, it would be perfect. Duke Qing has a good eye. That land is quite fertile, with very high yields every year. I just said I only wanted to build a garden estate. In that case, you must have checked the feng shui? The feng shui there is excellent. Best just name your price, young master. I have matters to attend to. Qingxiu really didn't want to waste another word on this fool. Duke Qing, I'll take my leave, you can discuss it with my son. Hou Junji stood up to go, but before leaving, he reminded his son. Boy, if Duke Qing likes it, treat it as a favor, don't name some sky-high price. Don't worry, father. Hou Yuanheng answered perfunctorily. This boy is hopeless, Hou Junji muttered in dissatisfaction, then left. Well then, since my father has spoken, I'll transfer that land to Duke Qing for 8,000 guan. How about it? Hou Yuanheng thought for a long time before coming up with what he believed was a very reasonable price. Qingxiu looked at him in disbelief, not because the price was nearly double, but because he couldn't believe the son of a duke could be so small-minded. A mere few thousand guan, haggling like a petty merchant afraid of losing out. At this rate, even if Hou Junji doesn't go down that path, his family fortune will still be ruined sooner or later by such filial sons. Qingxiu actually felt a bit of pity for him. Does young master think I don't know the market price? Sanchuan village is just thin farmland, with poor irrigation and almost entirely dependent on manual watering, very low yield each year, even on the open market it's unwanted land. At your price, I could buy 2 Sanchuan villages and have silver left over. Hou Yuanheng laughed awkwardly. Hee, is that so? I'm not too familiar with the market, so my price may have been a bit unreasonable. That was just what he said. In his mind, he thought Qingxiu was crafty and had done market research ahead of time. But that was normal for such fools. They all believed everyone else was stupid, and only they were clever. I won't let you lose, 4,000 guan, and we sign the land deed right now. Truth be told, Qingxiu was already being generous, offering slightly below market value. All right, I'll just take a small loss to help Duke Qing build his estate. Hou Yuanheng readily agreed, seizing the chance to climb down. Qingxiu's smile vanished. No need to act like you're doing me a favor. We both know who's getting the better deal. If you don't want to sell, I'll leave right now. He stood as if to go. Wait. Please stay, Duke Qing. Since you honor me by buying my few acres of thin land, Sanchuan village is yours. Hou Yuanheng wasn't about to let this chance slip away. Then enough talk, bring the deed, and later send someone to my residence for the payment. The deed was signed without obstacle, both sides satisfied. Hou Yuanheng was secretly delighted, thinking he'd gotten a great deal, finally unloading a bad asset for a pile of silver. Of course, he didn't know that Qingxiu had even more reason to be pleased. When your estate is built, Duke Qing, you must invite me to see it. Qingxiu couldn't help but smile at that. Rest assured, young Master Hou. Looking at his smug, foolish grin, Qingxiu felt utter contempt in his heart. After securing the land, the next day Qingxiu brought along a large number of his household guards, each carrying money, drills, and other tools. A fully armed group marched grandly into the village. The sight made the whole village somewhat uneasy. They thought these men had come to arrest a fugitive. Fellow villagers. Sanchuan village has now changed hands. It is the fief of Duke Qing. Duke Qing knows you have suffered from malaria this year, and your households are poor, so he is waiving all land rent for the year. All harvest from your plots will remain yours. The guards announced loudly, and the villagers could hardly believe their ears. They had only just scraped together the grain to pay rent and were preparing to tighten their belts for winter. And now, such explosive good news. After a brief silence, they burst into joyful cheers. Thank you, Duke Qing. We're saved. Now we can finally use the leftover money to buy medicine and save lives. Duke Qing is truly a good man. It's worth being his tenant farmer for life. Thank you, Duke Qing, sob. Qingxiu looked at their tearful gratitude, but felt little comfort. He knew that if he didn't waive the rent, many in the village would starve or die of illness before winter ended. I promised those willing to stay I would give them work. For those unwilling to stay, come here to receive 2 guan per person as travel money. 2 guan was an enormous sum for ordinary farmers. But even after the guards called twice, no one moved to collect the money. By now, Qingxiu understood their meaning. You all want to stay? We will all follow Duke Qing's arrangements. The villagers answered in unison. Their decision was clear. Seeking work elsewhere might not lead anywhere, but working under Qingxiu, they would never starve. Good. Since you trust me, I promise you, within half a year, your lives will be 1,000 times better than now. Qingxiu laughed. Everyone, come forward and take 1 guan, then gather all the rice from your fields. After that, level all the farmland and pack it down. At these words, the villagers were shocked. Was he joking? He had spent so much money to buy this land, only to level it? Duke Qing, are you planning to build a residence here? You don't need to do it on farmland. What a waste, the village chief said, pained. Of course, the villagers also feared that once the fields were leveled, they would have no income. Even with Duke Qing's promise, they still deeply believed, without farming, there is no food. This is not for you to worry about. Just follow my orders. Qingxiu's tone left no room for doubt. After a moment's silence, the chief firmly voiced the villagers' thoughts. Follow Duke Qing's orders. Villagers, prepare your tools. After lunch we harvest, then level the land. All right, the villagers answered, coming forward to collect their money. Qingxiu then looked at his guards, who immediately understood, grabbing drills and getting to work. He went to the pit where steam had previously emerged and ordered them to drill in the surrounding area, as deep as possible. With his orders, they wasted no time. Dozens of drills roared in unison. Soon, wisps of steam rose from dozens of spots, and the village was shrouded in mist. The villagers working in the fields were terrified. Many still stubbornly believed the steam was poisonous. Is Duke Qing letting the poisonous gas underground escape completely? Sounds reasonable. That way the village will be cleaner. I think the malaria we've suffered is all because of this underground poison. Duke Qing truly cares for us commoners. Look, he's personally working inside. As they gossiped, Qingxiu's wait proved worthwhile. By midday, a guard rushed over to report. Duke Qing. Something's wrong. We've hit an underground water vein, but it's got a big problem. If there's a problem, all the better. Take me there. When Qingxiu saw steaming water gushing from the newly drilled hole, he burst out laughing. The others were fearful, they couldn't imagine how hot water could exist underground. From the first steam he saw during the initial drilling, Qingxiu had guessed there was a hot spring below. The value of a hot spring was beyond words, a rare treasure since ancient times. Many imperial gardens were built upon them. With a hot spring here, this barren land's value instantly multiplied hundreds of times. Don't be afraid, this is hot spring water, very good for the body's health. Haven't you heard of it? He even took off his shoes and dipped his feet into the water. The warmth spread from his feet through his whole body, a comfort unlike anything from ordinary hot water. If the place were fully developed, he'd have jumped right in to bathe. This is a hot spring? To them, such a thing was legendary, they couldn't imagine it being real. Now, seeing it with their own eyes, they hardly recognized it. Is it really a hot spring? Seeing Qingxiu's look of enjoyment, the guards came closer, scooping water with their hands. So warm. The fresh steam rising from the surface was refreshing, driving away all fatigue. The warm water also chased away every trace of chill in their bodies. Wonderful. Brothers, this really is a hot spring, what good fortune. At that call, everyone eagerly took off their shoes, one after another dipping their feet into the water. Fortunately, the spring water was flowing, so there was no fear of contamination. Soon, they were all laughing and enjoying it. The exhaustion from drilling vanished, and everyone marveled at its magic. Qingxiu watched them silently, already forming a plan for making the best use of the hot spring. Duke Qing, if you sold this land now, who knows how many times your profit would be multiplied? Sell it? That was a joke. You brat, is that all the economic sense you have? Even if I gave you 1,000,000 taels of gold, you'd probably forge a golden axe and chop firewood with it day and night. Qingxiu said with a laugh and a curse. From the moment Qingxiu realized there was a spring here, a plan had already taken shape in his mind. He would turn this place into the first hot spring villa in the Tang dynasty. With his reputation and the popularity of a hot spring villa, the income would likely surpass even that of his byway residence. Brothers, take a short rest first. When we're done here, continue digging wells and find every single hot spring outlet in this place. Got it. Everyone responded in unison. After learning there was a hot spring underground, their enthusiasm doubled. After only a short break, they threw themselves back into work. In just a short time, they found several more hot spring outlets. Only when they were certain the search was complete did they finally stop. By late afternoon, the villagers working in the fields returned, weary, and were astonished to see the village well surrounded and transformed into a small, simple pool, a pool filled entirely with hot water. How much firewood did Duke Qing use to boil all this hot water? The village chief was baffled. Wasn't this wasteful? Not only was water precious, but hot water was even more so. To just leave it in the open like this pained anyone to see. But when they came closer, they were shocked to discover that this steaming hot water was bubbling straight out of a spring in the ground. This is real? A brave villager stepped forward and cautiously touched the water, exclaiming aloud. The crowd quickly gathered. The timid only dared touch it with their hands, while the bolder ones scooped up a handful to drink on the spot. It was amazing, so this was what Duke Qing had worked all day to bring up from underground. Did Duke Qing use some method, maybe something hidden underground that heats the water? I think this is coming straight from underground. Don't be ridiculous. How could hot water come from underground? They discussed among themselves. Clearly, none had ever seen a natural hot spring. Everyone, no need to be shocked, this is hot spring water. After enjoying their reactions, the guard in charge stepped forward with a smile to explain. Duke Qing discovered this underground hot spring vein early on. He bought this land precisely to develop the hot spring. When the time comes, this spring will be everyone's livelihood, and your income will be several times what you earned from farming. The villagers exploded in excitement. A hot spring, in their minds, this was an unimaginable treasure. And now it had been found right beneath their feet. Duke Qing is truly a man of vision. He knew there was a hot spring here long ago. With this, we can share in the fortune. Guarding such a spring, how could we ever worry about not living well again? The men could no longer contain themselves, stripping off their clothes and joyfully jumping into the hot spring. The women, of course, were too shy to bathe with the rough men, but they sat nearby, cautiously washing their feet. They had never experienced the magical way a hot spring washed away fatigue. After just a short soak, the day's exhaustion vanished completely. Since Duke Qing is developing this place, shouldn't we keep it secret? Otherwise, if the news spreads, won't many grow envious? The old village chief asked the guard, uneasy. The villagers still thought in terms of hiding good things at home, not afraid of thieves stealing, but afraid of them coveting. The guard just laughed. No need. Duke Qing said you should openly spread the word. The more people who know there's a hot spring here, the better. With the court's strong support, the well drilling progressed much faster than they had imagined. In just half a month, the work was nearly complete. Most villages now had access to well water. This not only solved their water supply issues but also gradually purified the heavily polluted river water. Even in Xiashang village, the most polluted area, there were no new cases of infection. One morning, after court, Li Er summoned his core ministers and eagerly placed a memorial on the table, smiling as he gestured for them to open it. Gentlemen, the malaria is now under good control, 9 days without a single new infection. And the daily death toll is dropping. Within a month, the epidemic will be completely stopped. Though he addressed everyone, his eyes were fixed warmly on Qingxiu. From start to finish, Li Er had supported the effort, and the court had carried out the work, but without Qingxiu's plan and drills, the epidemic could have dragged on for another 6 months, with deaths multiplying dozens or even hundreds of times. Duke Qing, in quelling this epidemic, your merit is the greatest. No one objected, they all admired Qingxiu's achievements without a trace of jealousy. Qingxiu, however, showed little pride, saying calmly, Your Majesty should now understand, all disasters come from human causes, shouldn't they? Li Er's face flushed at the reminder, thinking back to when he had piously knelt to heaven in fear and prayed. It was indeed shameful. Heaven's ways are constant, they do not extend life for the virtuous Yao, nor take it early for the tyrant Jia. The ancients had long understood this, but he had only now truly seen it. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Suddenly, a eunuch's urgent voice came from outside the hall. There is intelligence from Shandong and the Yellow Sea, please review it. Perfect timing, everyone is here. Let's read it together. Li Er took the report. As expected, it was news of victory from the army sent to Shandong to suppress the bandits. The bandits were cunning, but the army had been given strict orders to completely wipe out the bandit scourge in Shandong. They swept through the merchant routes, raiding every mountain stronghold, not letting even an ant escape. The bandits had expected the court to send troops, but not with such overwhelming force and ruthlessness. When the last public bandit leader was captured alive and executed, the overt bandit problem in Shandong was gone. Haha, just as I predicted. Duke Qing, I plan to send a second wave of salt merchants to Shandong, backed by the army to strongly deter the bandits there until they are completely quiet. What do you think? Qingxiu frowned slightly. He felt the matter was not so simple. In Qingxiu's view, those salt merchants had indeed underestimated Li Er's determination, but that didn't mean they had no other methods besides hiring mountain bandits to plunder. Cutting off a man's source of income is like killing his parents. Those salt merchants surely still had plenty of tricks they hadn't yet used. Your Majesty, these salt merchants will not yield easily. It's best to keep a close watch on them. Rest assured, Duke of Qing, I understand this. I also plan, in the name of the court, to support a group of salt merchants from Guangzhou, using them as the foundation to gradually erode the Shandong salt merchants' base. Li Er's strategy was correct. Those deeply entrenched Shandong salt merchants weren't afraid of the court's fierce, sudden suppression. After all, the court's concerns were not limited to salt merchants. One outbreak of malaria could easily push this matter aside. As long as the well-established salt merchant groups could take advantage of the court's distraction to maneuver behind the scenes, they could exhaust the court. But by using merchants to fight merchants, Li Er's approach would allow the court to step out of the quagmire and wage a war of attrition to gradually erode their power, a truly wise move. Suddenly, Qingxiu noticed Li Er's gaze falling on him, faint and not without ill intent. He vaguely guessed what this man was thinking. Duke of Qing, I still haven't decided who should lead this Guangzhou Salt Merchants Guild. This person must have far-sighted vision and exceptional commercial ability. Looking at the whole court, Chancellor Changsun Wuji immediately chimed in for Li Er, son-in-law, it seems you are absolutely the best candidate. Exactly. I think so too. Only the Duke of Qing is capable of taking on such a great responsibility. The two of them were clearly in cahoots, having planned in advance to rope Qingxiu into this guild. I refuse. Qingxiu rejected it without a second thought. It sounded nice, entrusting an important task, but wasn't it just about shifting the Shandong salt merchants' attacks onto him? Besides, that guild was a mess full of trouble. If all of it landed on him, how could he keep lying low and doing nothing? This target meant to draw all the fire, let someone else be it. Li Er seemed to have expected his refusal. You'll get 40% of the profits after the guild pays its yearly taxes. The ministers gasped at the generosity, and even Changsun Wuji hadn't expected the emperor to offer such favorable terms. Although the salt guild was highly profitable, after deducting the court's various taxes, the cost of transport, and expenses for hired labor and horses, the actual profit was less than 50%. This meant handing almost all the guild's profit to Qingxiu. Of course, on the surface, Li Er looked very generous, but to take this money, Qingxiu would also have to shoulder the guild's full responsibilities and endure the concentrated attacks of the Shandong salt merchants. If it were anyone else, even if Li Er wanted to give them this money, few at court would dare accept it. Your Majesty, even if the whole guild were in my name and all the profit went to me, I'm afraid I still wouldn't have time to serve as its president. Every business in the Duke's mansion needs my personal attention. If I add a large guild on top of that, I can't guarantee it will still be running by next year. Qingxiu put on a completely lazy air. His expression clearly said, if you make me take it, I'll be a hands-off boss and let the guild collapse. Very well. Li Er gritted his teeth. Clearly, the guild leader's position still required further thought. Suddenly, he remembered a memorial sent along with reports about the Shandong bandit problem, which he hadn't yet read. He had thought it unimportant, so he casually opened it for a quick look. The next moment, his expression turned from shock to gloom and anger. Have I been too lenient toward these petty border nations? The memorial reported another incident of salt merchant convoys being plundered. This time, the shipment was coarse black salt meant for sale to Silla, transported by sea into the Yellow Sea, only to be seized by pirates. Not only the goods and money, but even the ships and crew were taken. Only one merchant was sent back, beaten so badly he was unrecognizable, to deliver a message. From the king of the land of the rising sun in the east to the emperor of the Tang in the west, for the unprovoked insult and killing of my envoys, my country will surely settle this debt. Now I give Tang half a month to cede maritime rights in the Shandong Yellow Sea region to my country, pay in gold, silver, and silk as compensation, and open multiple seaports for trade, or my country will go to war. After reading this letter personally written by the so-called emperor of the Yamato kingdom, everyone fell silent. Not out of anger, but because it was utterly absurd. That so-called Yamato kingdom was just the island nation of Hua in the east, a tiny speck, yet they dared to threaten the Tang with war to force territory and reparations? No matter how you looked at it, the Hua people were insane. Their emperor has probably never traveled far, Qingxiu said, struggling to hold back his laughter and coughing to ease the awkwardness. Ahem. Your Majesty, what do you think? The Hua people are courting death. If we ignore this, how can I intimidate the world? They will think the Tang is strong on the outside but weak within. Faced with such provocation, Li Er's choice was beyond question. He exchanged brief glances with Changsun Wuji, Fang Xianling, and others, clearly having gained their approval. Summon Li Ji to see me. This summons made it clear, Li Er had decided to punish Hua with military action. Your Majesty is wise. If we don't quickly discipline them, Silla, Beech, and Goguryeo in the Three Han region will very likely follow suit to test the Tang's limits. Changsun Wuji strongly supported the decision, and after brief thought, the other ministers agreed it was the most effective approach. Except for Qingxiu. When he heard Li Er's order, his brows furrowed. It wasn't that he thought Hua shouldn't be punished, but with the Tang's current naval technology, they could at most manage short coastal voyages. To attack Hua would mean crossing a vast strait with a large army, while also ensuring uninterrupted and safe supply lines across the sea, something extremely difficult without even a compass invented yet. The chance of success was extremely low. But Qingxiu didn't pour cold water on Li Er's enthusiasm, he simply waited for Li Ji to arrive. Soon, after receiving the urgent summons, Li Ji rushed over with several trusted deputies, as Li Er had instructed. Before they even sat down, Li Er handed Li Ji the letter from Hua. As expected, Li Ji, initially puzzled, exploded in fury after reading it. That tiny Hua kingdom is actually so arrogant, even demanding cession of territory and reparations. Your Majesty, that Hua kingdom has offended the majesty of the Tang. No matter how far, they must be punished. Li Ji naturally understood why Li Er had summoned him here and shown him the imperial letter. He was equally eager to use this opportunity to campaign abroad and earn the merit of destroying a nation. After all, ever since his last sweeping victory over the Turks, everyone at court had envied his achievements. Li Ji certainly did not want to miss this golden opportunity, heaven sent. I understand that as well, said Li Er, but we can't simply let our blood run hot and act rashly. Hua must be punished, but we need an effective plan. Otherwise, it would be as foolish as Emperor Yang of Sui's campaign against Goguryeo. Li Er pointed to a map he had already prepared, where the location of Hua was clearly marked. To attack Hua, even departing from the nearest northeastern port in Shandong, the sea voyage would be nearly 1,000 li. Even on land, that would be an extremely long distance, let alone crossing such a vast ocean to fight. In the entire history since the founding of the Tang, and indeed in the thousands of years of Chinese history, there had never been such an expedition. Looking at the great distance marked on the map, Li Ji did not feel troubled or hesitant. On the contrary, he was thrilled and overjoyed. If this campaign succeeded, in this reign he would have the merit of destroying a nation. And in later generations' history books, he would forever be remembered as the first man to lead a cross-sea campaign. All great military minds would remember his name. This chance to be immortalized made Li Ji even more eager for the expedition. He said without hesitation, "Your servant can go to war. As long as your majesty maintains the supply lines along the sea route, with over 10,000 elite troops, on the day we land on the 4 islands will be the day Wa is destroyed." Li Ji was not boasting. In fact, he felt that even 10,000 was too many. He had seen those short Wa people with his own eyes, and Tang's elite troops could easily fight 10 to 1. He was completely confident that he could lead over 10,000 elite soldiers to destroy Wa and take that merit. Li Er knew Li Ji's ability and fully believed in him. He studied the map carefully and said, "I will first win over Silla, to use it as a forward supply base. From Silla, we will strike directly at Wa." Li Er's attack route was quite reasonable. Using Silla as a springboard could avoid several hundred li of sea travel and greatly reduce logistical pressure. They could even purchase supplies locally in Silla. Li Er and the others discussed further strategies, each offering their opinions, and the meeting lasted the whole day. Almost everyone present voiced support for attacking Wa, except Qingxiu. While Li Er sought opinions, his gaze often drifted to Qingxiu, hoping he would say something. But Qingxiu always pretended not to notice, keeping up his lazy demeanor. By nightfall, everyone realized how quickly the time had passed, and a preliminary plan for the Wa expedition was set. "Shurji, have the Ministry of Rights send envoys to Silla as soon as possible with my order, instructing them to cooperate with the Tang army's attack on Wa." As soon as Li Er finished speaking, Qingxiu suddenly spoke up from the side, "Your Majesty, this is a good opportunity to get Silla on board." His words struck Li Er like a jolt of inspiration. He immediately thought of the next step. Inwardly, Li Er was deeply grateful to Qingxiu. Without his reminder, he would have forgotten the most crucial part. He then added to Xiao Yu, "Also, inform the Queen of Silla that as long as she cooperates with the Tang army, regardless of whether this campaign succeeds, I will permit Silla to submit to the Tang and will protect them." This protection was in fact an open way to form a military alliance with Silla, creating a combined encirclement of Goguryeo. This was exactly the key move Qingxiu had reminded him of. It had to be arranged in advance. "I understand," Xiao Yu replied, then left, knowing he would be swamped with work the next day. Li Er looked seriously at Li Ji. "Mao Gong, I ask you, in this cross-sea operation, not only do you have no experience, but in previous dynasties there has never been such a campaign. How will you win?" This question was crucial. Li Er was not worried about Li Ji's command in land battles. He was sure that once they landed, the Tang army would crush Wa's forces. But this was a cross-sea operation. Navigation and naval combat were both indispensable. He did not want to throw away the lives of more than 10,000 Tang soldiers in vain. "Your Majesty, give me 2 days, and I will be able to write an effective expedition plan," Li Ji said confidently. At this moment, a lazy voice came from a corner, "General, there's no need to waste time writing that thing, it's useless." Everyone's attention turned to see Qingxiu, who they thought had been asleep, sitting up and stretching casually. Li Ji was displeased. "Duke of Qing, what do you mean? I, Li Maogong, may have no prior merit of destroying a nation, but I have earned great credit in securing the Tang realm." He did not lash out directly, knowing Qingxiu was no ordinary man. Li Jing's victory over the Turks owed its greatest credit to Qingxiu. This man knew military matters. "What do I mean? Simply that no one in the Tang has ever fought a transoceanic campaign, and no one knows how difficult it truly is." Qingxiu's voice was steady and calm. "I'll ask only one thing, General Li, have you ever seen the waves in the Strait of Wa?" What? Li Ji was baffled. For commanders who had fought their whole lives inland and had barely even seen the sea, waves were an unfamiliar concept. Qingxiu continued, "It's no exaggeration to say that even the largest ships the Tang could build, if they encounter the typhoon waves of the Wa Strait, will be destroyed without a trace. And the worst part is, typhoons and massive waves happen there often. Wa had avoided threats from the Central Plains dynasties for thousands of years because of this natural barrier. Later dynasties had tried to attack Wa, but entire armies were destroyed by typhoons, swallowed by the sea. And that was with navigation and shipbuilding technology far more advanced than the Tang's current level. If we went to war now, the result is easy to imagine." Li Ji laughed. "Duke of Qing, you worry too much. You should know that the shipbuilders of Jiangnan are unmatched in skill. The ships they build won't capsize even in the most turbulent waters of the Yellow River. They are extremely stable. Even better than those built by the Hua themselves. Hearing this, Qingxiu almost burst out laughing. He actually used the flow of the Yellow River to compare with the danger level of ocean typhoons. That was almost like comparing the height of the giant wild goose pagoda to Mount Tai, nonsense and laughable. Generally, you should respect things you've never seen. If you act stubbornly, you will surely regret it, Qingxiu said, giving Li Ji no face at all. Duke of Qing. I understand that you also know military matters, but… Enough, stop here. Li Ji was unwilling to accept it and was about to argue, but Li Er immediately spoke, cutting off their quarrel. Duke of Qing, Li Ji was with me when we pacified the realm. His ability is worth trusting, otherwise, I would not have thought of him first. Just rest assured. In that case, Your Majesty, decide as you see fit. Qingxiu shrugged. He had originally wanted to help Li Er a little, but now it seemed better to let him run into trouble himself. There would be a time when Li Er would come to him for help. Your Majesty, I'll take my leave. Qingxiu rose, leaning on his saber, and yawned as he bowed out. It's so late, why not dine with me before leaving? Thank you, Your Majesty. But, to be honest, the imperial palace meals can't compare to those at my own mansion. Hearing this made Li Er's mouth twitch, though it was indeed true. Of course, once Qingxiu got home, it wouldn't be just one meal waiting for him. Thanks to Su Xiaochun's little schemes, he still had to feed another person at home. Her draining plan so far hadn't made Qingxiu especially tired. Instead, it was she who had been worn out by having to deal with Qingxiu's nightly attacks at full intensity. She had become so exhausted that she even began to doubt whether her husband was really human. With the plan to attack Hua in motion and envoys already sent from Chang'an to Silla, everything began to be prepared in full swing. To ensure nothing went wrong, Li Ji personally went down to Jiangnan to recruit fishermen to train as a naval force capable of fighting across the sea. He also made detailed arrangements for the building of warships. His preparations were thorough in every respect. If Qingxiu didn't already know how troublesome an overseas expedition was, he might actually have believed that Li Ji was sure to return victorious from this campaign. At the same time, another piece of news began to spread through Chang'an without warning. Although it wasn't officially announced, it quickly became known to almost everyone in the city. Have you heard? In Sanchuan village, they recently dug up a hot spring from underground. That's the kind of treasure site that only imperial gardens are allowed to build on. I heard the hot spring water is so hot it can cook eggs directly. If you bathe in it, it can drive away fatigue and is even said to have health benefits and prolong life. I think it was discovered when they were drilling a well. The villagers there are so lucky. Lucky? They're tenant farmers. That land belongs to Duke of Lu. Ah, nobles truly are born to fortune. These rumors quickly became a popular topic over tea in the city. Naturally, the news reached the Duke of Lu's mansion without surprise. And the first person in the household to hear about it was Hou Yuanheng. This fool at first thought it was just a rumor among commoners, since there was no confirmation. He didn't believe such a treasure spring could exist beneath that barren land. But as the rumors grew more detailed, he became increasingly suspicious that it might be true. He even took a few retainers and set out for Sanchuan village to investigate. Remember, keep your eyes open and get as much information as you can. If it turns out to be false, once we get back to Chang'an we must spread the word quickly so everyone knows it's just a rumor. The retainers didn't understand why Hou Yuanheng was doing this. Young master, isn't that unnecessary? It's already a baseless rumor, why bother exposing it? Hou Yuanheng spat in annoyance, looking displeased. Qingxiu bought Sanchuan village for just a little money, and now this rumor is spreading in Chang'an. Compare the two things, don't you understand what's going on? All the retainers shook their heads in unison. They knew all too well that Hou Yuanheng was a self-important idiot, full of stupid ideas yet convinced he was a genius. Idiots! A bunch of pigs! Hou Yuanheng cursed angrily. Isn't he just trying to use this chance to make his name spread through Chang'an again and to promote his businesses? If not for his noble status, anyone who heard that might have laughed out loud on the spot, and even mocked him. With Qingxiu's fame, did he really need to advertise himself in Chang'an? But since this was the son of Hou Junji, they could only pretend to have suddenly understood and agree repeatedly. All right, just make sure you keep sharp? As they reached the outskirts of Sanchuan village, they saw an unbelievable sight. The farmers were transporting sand and stone into the fields, filling them in, leveling the ground with earth, and using mules to compact it. Heh, everyone in Chang'an says Qingxiu is brilliant. But now I see he's nothing but a fool. Hou Yuanheng sneered. Spending all that money to buy farmland, only to cover it all with earth and bury it, such waste. You, come here. Ho Yuanheng rudely called to the villagers working in the field, but no one paid him any attention, they were busy with their own work. This made Ho Yuanheng furious. Even if these people were no longer his tenant farmers, he was still a duke's second son. How could such lowly peasants ignore him? Are you all deaf when I'm talking to you? In anger, Ho Yuanheng strode into the field, kicked over a pile of dirt in front of him, and began shouting. Only then did the villagers notice a stranger had entered the village, but no one recognized Ho Yuanheng. Although he had once been the owner of Sanchuan village, this spoiled young master had never cared about such a poor place, and no one there had ever seen his face. Don't know who I am? I am the second son of the Duke of Lu, Ho Yuanheng. The land you're farming now used to belong to my Ho family. The villagers looked at him as if he were mentally challenged, then went back to their work without a word. If they had still been under his authority, they might have forced themselves to be polite. But now this land belonged to the Duke of Qing, they ate thanks to Qingxiu. Why would they show respect to Ho Yuanheng? Yes, he was the son of the Duke of Lu, but they relied on the Duke of Qing. What are you all doing? Looking down on me? Ho Yuanheng exploded in anger. It was the first time he had ever been so blatantly ignored. Even princes and nobles visiting his mansion in the capital would treat him with respectful courtesy. It seems you really have no respect at all. Ho Yuanheng jumped with rage. Bring the whip. I need to teach these insolent peasants what rules are. They really think that after leaving my control, they've all become free people. He shouted twice, but when he looked around, he was surprised to find that all the servants were just staring at him. Not one of them went to fetch a whip. Young master, it's fine to scold or beat these peasants casually, but now they're commoners working on the Duke of Qing's land. Going to someone else's ducal territory to deliberately cause trouble could be a serious matter or a small one. If no one pursued it, it would end there, but if Qingxiu decided to pursue it, even his father, the Duke of Lu, knew to avoid this favorite of the emperor as much as possible. But Ho Yuanheng refused to swallow his pride. Gritting his teeth, he said, whatever trouble comes of it, I'll take it. Today I must teach these people a lesson. Give me the whip. Everyone silently cursed in their hearts. How could the brilliant Ho Junji have a son like this? Young master, if you really beat these farmers today, I fear that before His Majesty even investigates, the Duke himself won't spare you. This one sentence from a servant sobered the blood-rushed Ho Yuanheng. He had never been beaten by society, but he had certainly been beaten hard by his father. His hands began to tremble, and for once he cleared his head. Remembering how Ho Junji often warned him not to provoke Qingxiu without reason, he had to start thinking seriously about the consequences. It's not that I'm letting them go, it's that these lowly people aren't worth me personally lifting a hand to hit. Yes, yes. You're magnanimous enough to let them off. The servants played along, giving him face. Ha 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 ha. Hearing this, the villagers working in the distance burst into mocking laughter, their jeers making Ho Yuanheng's face turn dark again. Old man, I heard a few days ago the village dug up a hot spring. Is that true? Ho Yuanheng stepped forward and rudely blocked an old farmer to ask. The old farmer didn't even look at him. Young master, why don't you look in the village yourself? Insolence! How dare you speak to me like that? The only reason I'm not hitting you is because I don't want the trouble, not because I'm afraid. Who wouldn't be afraid of this Ho Yuanheng acting like a madman? The old farmer didn't want this trouble, but still muttered in a muffled voice, I'm just a farmer, I know nothing. You'd better ask the Duke of Qing. Useless. At the words, Duke of Qing, Ho Yuanheng stepped back like a defeated rooster. Let's go, we'll look in the village. But before they could enter, they were stopped right at the gate by Qingxiu's guards. Sanchuan village is now the Duke of Qing's land. His lordship ordered that idlers must not enter without permission. Ho Yuanheng sneered. Do you know who I am? Your master bought Sanchuan village from me. I am the Duke of Lu's second son. The guard didn't even glance at him. Even if you were the Duke of Lu himself, you'd still have to get the Duke of Qing's permission. Ho Yuanheng hadn't expected Qingxiu's men to be so uncooperative. A quick-witted servant beside him pulled him aside. Young master, let me handle this. Then, smiling, he stepped forward. Brother, my young master is just curious. We heard you recently dug up a hot spring here, could you tell us a bit about it? The guard gave him a sideways look, then chuckled. It's not that I can't talk about it, Lord Qing never told us to keep quiet. But I just can't stand the look of your young master. Brother, we haven't liked him for a long time either. But what can we do, we have to earn a living. The servant looked helpless. Come on, brother, just help us out. Let him take a quick look at the hot spring so he'll stop making trouble for us. Fine. I don't mind doing you a favor. The guard agreed readily. After all, the Duke of Qing had already instructed them. If Hou Yuanhing came because of the hot spring news, there was no need to hide it, just let him see. When he was first allowed in, Hou Yuanhing still thought the so-called hot spring was just a rumor that had grown in the telling. But when he actually saw the fenced-off pool, with steaming hot water gushing out continuously, sending rolling waves of heat straight into the air, Hou Yuanhing was completely dumbfounded. This was absolutely a real hot spring. This can't be, he stammered, even reaching out to test the water with his own hand. When the comforting warmth spread from his fingers through his whole body, he shivered involuntarily. It was a genuine hot spring, no mistake. This is impossible. When I sold him this land, there was no hot spring, not even a well could find water. The grain from those few acres of thin soil couldn't even cover the cost. How did you get this? This hot spring must be fake, you must have used some trick to make a false one. Hou Yuanhing ranted like a madman, shouting hoarsely at the guards as if the whole world had conspired to deceive him. Hey! Don't shout at me, I have no idea how it happened. The Duke of Qing is like an immortal. Your eyes aren't as good as his, and you didn't even know you were sitting on a gold mine. The guard mocked him mercilessly, each word stabbing straight into Hou Yuanhing's heart. Hou Yuanhing couldn't accept that something he had thrown away like garbage had turned into gold in someone else's hands. He couldn't help but imagine, if he had discovered the hot spring himself, how much benefit could he have gained? Even if he didn't earn a single coin from it, offering it directly to the emperor might have pleased him enough to let Hou Yuanhing outshine his elder brother, Hou Yuanchang. Who knew, maybe the Duke of Lu's title would one day be his. Go call Qingxiu. I have something to ask him. Hou Yuanhing ordered the guard angrily. What kind of fool is this? The guard rolled his eyes, cursing silently, and walked away. You call him here for me. Hou Yuanhing demanded again. But the guard only lazily replied, when is the young master planning to leave? Our estate isn't open to the public yet. If you're interested, once it opens, you can ask the Duke of Qing for permission to come in. Hou Yuanhing froze. An estate? An open estate? Was Qingxiu planning to turn this place into a money-making hot spring resort? Hou Yuanhing gnashed his teeth. In his view, Qingxiu had tricked him out of all of this. He must have known from the start that there was a hot spring underground, this bastard. Sullen, Hou Yuanhing swung his arm and left, his guards following with relief, eager to get away from this disgrace of a young master. They truly didn't want to stay there and keep losing face. But Hou Yuanhing had no intention of letting it go. The more he thought about it on the way home, the angrier he became. He went straight to Hou Junji to bring it up. Father, you must have heard the rumors going around Chang'an recently about a hot spring, right? Hou Junji had just returned from morning court and was hoping to rest for a bit. When his foolish son barged in, his face immediately showed his displeasure. I know. It's nothing but idle street gossip. You didn't actually believe it, did you? Hou Yuanhing became anxious. Father. It's not a question of whether I believe it or not, it's that it's actually true. He then told in detail everything he had seen and heard on his trip to Sanchuan village. After hearing it, Hou Junji's expression did indeed change. So Qingxiu really had such sharp vision. He had immediately judged the place to be a hot spring site and, without hesitation, bought the land outright. That kind of eye and decisiveness, Hou Junji had to admit he admired it. If he's managed to tap a hot spring, and he makes use of the opportunity, he'll probably earn a fortune, Hou Junji murmured. Hou Yuanhing, however, was fuming. But he dug up that hot spring on our land. Then tricked us into selling it to him, how is that not cheating us? For a moment, that did stir Hou Junji's anger, but only for a moment. Even if they hadn't sold that land to Qingxiu and kept it in their hands, could they have dug out the hot spring themselves? In the end, it was still Qingxiu who, with some kind of black technology drill, had forced the hot spring out. Yes, he hadn't revealed the news when buying the land, but based on the situation at the time. They had sold a piece of land that was sure to lose money. Whether Qingxiu lost or profited afterward had nothing to do with them anymore. Even if Hou Junji coveted the hot spring now, there was nothing he could do. Seeing his father frown but remain unmoved, Hou Yuanhing couldn't help saying, we can't just take this loss quietly. What do you want to do? Hou Junji asked irritably. Of course, take the land back. You're a founding elder of the dynasty, what is this Qingxiu compared to you? Even if you just used your rank to pressure him, he... Shut up. Hou Junji didn't expect his son's words to get more foolish and unreasonable by the second, and he exploded in fury. Have him, a duke, use his title to pressure another duke, just to seize a hot spring plot? That would be ripping his own face off. Get back to your room and copy The Art of War 100 times. You can't leave until it's done. If you miss even a single character, I'll break your legs myself. Faced with his father's rage, The fool went pale with fear and ran off at once. Even so, in his heart, his resentment toward Qingxiu only deepened. One day, I'll take that hot spring land back, just wait. At that moment, Hou Yuanhing was the very picture of a petty and foolish schemer, his eyes glinting with greed, stupidity, and malice. At morning court, Li Er looked at a memorial sent from Jiangnan, his face full of satisfaction. It had been written personally by Li Ji, who truly was efficient. He had been in Jiangnan only a few days and had already mobilized the shipyards to produce blueprints for a fleet capable of carrying more than 10,000 men on an expedition. He had also gathered all the largest ships in Jiangnan and brought in the best shipwrights to refit them, claiming he could have the fleet ready in the shortest possible time and strike Hua at once. Putting this in Li Ji's hands was exactly the right choice. Li Er was very pleased with his decision. Xiao Yu chimed in at the right moment. "Your Majesty, the envoys have already arrived in Silla. From the letter they sent back, the King of Silla seems welcoming. There's an 80 to 90% chance the alliance will be formed. Then there's no need to delay. Tell Li Ji that once the navy is trained, he should go to Silla immediately to prepare." Li Er looked to the assembled ministers. "My loyal subjects, do you have any further opinions on this expedition to Hua? Speak freely." The ministers glanced at one another. None had particularly strong suggestions. Naturally, no one opposed it either, since Li Er had already made such thorough preparations. "Your Majesty, I think this seaborne expedition should not be rushed." Right on cue, Wei Jing stepped forward. This fellow always seemed to stand up when Li Er had made a decision, either to oppose it or to find fault, practically a standing tradition in court sessions. "Why do you say this?" Li Er asked, already feeling a headache coming on but forcing himself to be patient. Wei Jing replied, "I have a student from the coastal area of Shandong. When he heard you were preparing to attack Hua, he told me to inform you. Anytime you go far out to sea, there is a strange illness you will inevitably catch. It is hard to cure while at sea, but once you return to land, it disappears on its own. Even fishermen who spend their lives at sea can't avoid it. If the army is to set out, we must have precautions against this illness." Li Er didn't take Wei Zheng's words seriously. Although Wei Zheng often gave advice, he knew little of folk customs, and perhaps his student was only describing a local malady. "I've never heard of such an illness. What exactly are the symptoms of this illness? Describe them in detail." A voice interrupted before Li Er could finish. It was Qingxiu, who until now had not spoken at all, suddenly addressing Wei Zheng directly. Wei Zheng was surprised that Qingxiu was the first to ask, but answered, "Mostly, bleeding from the gums, nosebleeds, strange bruises under the skin, and general weakness." He thought carefully and recounted everything he knew, trying to be as detailed as possible. Li Er only found it more baffling. He had never heard of such symptoms. But Qingxiu listened with great attention, nodding from time to time. When Wei Zheng finished, Qingxiu immediately understood. The illness Wei Zheng described was scurvy. It wasn't some mysterious infectious disease found only at sea, but the result of long periods without fresh vegetables or fruits, leading to vitamin deficiencies. Others might not know this disease, but Qingxiu knew it all too well. Li Er rarely saw Qingxiu so serious, so he began to doubt his earlier judgment. Could the illness Wei Zheng mentioned actually be real? "Duke of Qing, you know about this illness?" Wei Zheng asked, puzzled. "More or less. I've seen quite a lot of these symptoms in past years. This disease is called scurvy." Qingxiu gave a slight nod. "It's not fatal, but if the army goes to war without solving this problem, it will definitely cause a serious drop in combat effectiveness." At these words, the court erupted. The ministers looked at each other, whispering. "Duke of Qing really is knowledgeable. I've never heard of this scurvy before. If it can't be resolved at such a critical time, won't it delay the army's expedition? Censor Wang, didn't you grow up by the sea? Have you heard of how to treat this illness? I've never even seen it. How would I know how to cure it?" As the ministers murmured, Li Er's expression grew darker and darker. He had thought everything was already perfectly prepared, yet now a new problem appeared. "Duke of Qing, is this truly the case? Does your Majesty think I would joke about this at such a time? Then, how do we solve it? Do you know a way?" Li Er could no longer hide the urgency in his tone and expression. "I suppose I do," Qingxiu answered vaguely. Scurvy might have troublesome effects, but the cure was very simple. Just ensure a supply of fresh fruits. In modern times, this would be easy, but in the Tang dynasty it was hard. Any land that could be used for farming would never be used for other crops. Even cash crops could only be grown in certain areas, and there was no space for large-scale fruit cultivation. Even if there were small areas growing them, it would be impossible to supply enough for a cross-sea campaign. "Your Majesty, it's getting late. If you have time tomorrow after court, could you come to my residence?" Qingxiu suddenly said. Li Er paused, immediately understanding the hidden meaning. Court dismissed. The next day, after changing out of his court robes, Li Er summoned Fang Xianling and Wei Zheng to accompany him. How is physician Du's condition? I just saw him in morning court. Your Majesty, although his condition has improved somewhat, he is still very weak. After court just now, he nearly fainted. Then let him rest. You two will go with me. Li Er led them out of the palace and went straight to the Duke of Qing's residence. When they arrived, Qingxiu did not come out to greet them. He sat in the courtyard with a square wooden box in front of him. He seemed very focused on it, so much so that he didn't even acknowledge Li Er when he approached. Duke of Qing, yesterday you told me to come in person. What is this about? Do you have a way to deal with that scurvy? I suppose I have a solution. Qingxiu pointed at the box in front of him. Your Majesty, look, inside is the prescription. Li Er was overjoyed and quickly stepped forward to open it. Inside was half a box of clear water, covered by a perforated board. Through the holes, pale, jade-like shoots with green tips grew upward. They looked like newly sprouted plants, but were taller and thicker than ordinary sprouts. At a glance, one couldn't tell exactly what they were. This is the medicine to cure scurvy? Not only can it cure scurvy, it can also cure another illness everyone has. What illness? Hunger. Li Er was stunned. Was that even considered an illness? Everyone gets it every day, you have to eat to cure it. Doesn't that count? Qingxiu laughed heartily. Duke of Qing, stop being mysterious. I have many matters to handle later. Li Er said helplessly, he could never win against Qingxiu's teasing. Bring it up. Coming. At Qingxiu's order, Urguzi came over with a tray of fragrant dishes, setting it carefully before them. Your Majesty, please. This is a stir-fried dish made from bean sprouts. Please try it. Oh, and by the way, the bean sprouts came from that box. The Duke of Qing just grew them this morning. The taste is first-rate. Urguzi spoke animatedly, but Li Er's attention was entirely on the plate of stir-fried bean sprouts. He had no mind to listen. Not only was the dish something he had never seen before, but its fresh aroma made his appetite surge. Urguzi, get back to your work. Seeing Li Er's eagerness, Qingxiu sent Urguzi away. Duke of Qing, you first. Now that the servants were gone, Li Er picked up his chopsticks, then remembered he was a guest and forced himself to gesture for Qingxiu to start. No need. This dish was prepared especially for your Majesty. In that case, I won't be polite. Unable to wait any longer, Li Er picked up some bean sprouts and tasted them carefully. The moment they entered his mouth, a unique fresh fragrance spread, and the sprouts had a crisp, springy texture, releasing bursts of juice as he chewed. The flavor was unlike anything he'd ever tasted, and the texture was superb, better even than many imperial dishes that required complex preparation to achieve a special taste. Excellent. Li Er praised without hesitation and motioned for Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling to eat as well. The three of them dug in, forgetting all decorum, and in no time the plate of bean sprouts was completely gone. Excellent. What a dish. These bean sprouts are truly extraordinary. I've never eaten such unique vegetables. Still savoring the taste, Li Er finally remembered he had come to treat scurvy. Duke of Qing, this dish may taste great, but can it really cure scurvy? Li Er still thought of medicine as being bitter. Something so delicious didn't seem like it could cure illness. Qingxiu wanted to explain the cause of scurvy, but knew Li Er lacked the knowledge to understand. Fine, better to speak in a way he could grasp. As they say, the human body contains both yin and yang. When they are in balance, one is healthy. When they are out of balance, illness strikes like a mountain. Qingxiu spoke utter nonsense with a completely serious face, while Li Er and the other two listened with full attention. The balance of yin and yang in the human body mainly comes from diet. People who spend long periods sailing at sea can't eat fresh vegetables. Their bodies become strong in yang energy but weak in yin energy, and so they get scurvy. At last, Qingxiu had explained it in a way they could understand. I see. Li Er suddenly realized. As long as we can keep providing fresh vegetables, we can make sure they don't get scurvy. No wonder people living on land rarely get it, it's because they can eat fresh vegetables anytime. In that case, why don't we just supply the ships with vegetables for the expedition? Why bother with these bean sprouts? Wei Zheng's words immediately drew looks of disdain from both Li Er and Qingxiu. He had never worked at the lowest levels of logistics and had no idea how foolish his suggestion was. Qingxiu couldn't be bothered to waste words on such a blockhead, so Li Er patiently explained, fresh vegetables can't be stored for long, and they spoil easily during transport on land, let alone in the confined, sealed spaces of ships at sea. They'd probably rot and stink within 2 days of being loaded onto the ships, and might even make the sailors and soldiers sick. Wei Zheng was baffled. Still unconvinced, he asked, but these bean sprouts are also vegetables that spoil easily. Wouldn't they rot on the ships as well? Dr. Wei, could you please think before you speak? You don't even know what bean sprouts are, yet you make conclusions. No wonder all you can do is give opinions. Just watch and learn. Qingxiu's blunt retort made Wei Zhang's face flush red, but he didn't know how to answer. Qingxiu simply lifted the perforated board from the box so everyone could see how the bean sprouts actually grew. These are soybeans? Li'er asked in surprise. Each pale, jade-like sprout was connected below to a large, plump soybean, a most common ingredient. These bean sprouts are very easy to grow. Just soak soybeans in fresh water, and within about 10 hours they'll produce edible sprouts. You don't need soil or sunlight, and the yield is high. During a voyage, you just soak them the night before eating. There's no need for storage at all. Hearing Qingxiu's explanation, Li'er was overjoyed. These bean sprouts seemed perfectly designed for long sea expeditions. They were simple to make, not limited by the environment, and, most importantly, completely avoided the problem of storage. And the soybeans needed for sprouting, unlike other vegetables, could be stored for a long time, long enough to last the entire campaign against Hua. Even Wei Zhang was convinced. Though he liked to find faults, he truly couldn't find one now. Duke of Qing is indeed impressive, to have developed such a special vegetable. Duke of Qing, before the expedition has even begun, you've solved a major problem for me. When it comes time to reward achievements, yours will be a great merit. Li'er was eager to return to the palace and test whether the sprouting method worked, so he quickly prepared to leave. Your Majesty, don't be in such a rush to go. It's not enough to just know how to sprout them. The key ingredient isn't just any soybean, you can't grow good sprouts from random beans. Li'er froze slightly at those words, guessing what Qingxiu was getting at. There are many details in sprouting, including the water used. And most importantly, the beans need special treatment. Otherwise, even if you get sprouts, they'll taste bitter and be hard to swallow. Qingxiu spoke with deliberate gravity. Li'er said patiently, I understand. I'll send people to learn the technique from you, and we'll buy the soybeans from you. How about that? Your Majesty is wise. Qingxiu was very pleased with Li'er's quick understanding, it saved him a lot of talking. Good. I'll send a price list for the soybeans to the palace later. They'll be the best quality, so your Majesty won't have to worry about anything. Except the money, of course. With that, Li'er was reassured. Expensive things have only one drawback, the price. Since Qingxiu guaranteed the quality, there would be no problems. But someone just had to spoil the mood. Wei Zhang said sternly, Duke of Qing, the court's expedition is a major matter. As a duke, you should help share the burden. This sprouting method should be reported to the court directly, how can you use it to make a profit? How old are you, Dr. Wei? Qingxiu glanced at him coolly. Wei Zhang, irritated, shot back, what do you mean by that, Duke of Qing? I just think your mind isn't very mature. If you don't understand reason, you might as well go back to private school and learn how to behave. Besides, this is an agreement between me and His Majesty. What does it have to do with you? When the Turks caused trouble on the border, why didn't you volunteer to go pacify them? Qingxiu's sharp mockery left Wei Zhang red-faced. Enough. Li'er cut him off impatiently. Let's end it here. I don't want to waste time. Dr. Wei, you can say less too. Though Li'er sounded annoyed, inside he was secretly pleased. He disliked Wei Zhang for a long time, but couldn't directly rebuke him because of his position. Now, seeing Wei Zhang being shut down without mercy by Qingxiu, he was more than happy. Wei Zhang said no more, leaving sullenly with Li'er. Duke of Qing, these bean sprouts taste excellent. Could you sell me some? I want to take them home for my family to try. Fang Xianling was clearly interested. If Duke of Liang likes them, I can give you some. If you enjoy them, you can come by more anytime. Qingxiu was generous enough. He also saw a great business opportunity, he'd use Fang Xianling to spread the word about the sprouts. Once everyone in Chang'an knew about them, he'd make another fortune. Thank you, Duke of Qing. Fang Xianling was delighted, leaving with a large box of sprouts and promising to tell his colleagues to come by and taste them. Erguzi. Send some bean sprouts to Baiwei residence. Tell the madam to add a signature dish tomorrow, made from these sprouts. Qingxiu smiled slightly at the thought of bean sprouts sweeping through Chang'an. That day, Baiwei residence in Chang'an was as busy as usual, full of people coming and going. But today, the customers were not talking about strange stories from all over the world. They were talking about a new dish on the menu. Stir-fried bean sprouts. Old Wang, have you tried it? Not only have I never tried it, I don't even know what bean sprouts are. As expected of Baiwei residents, they always come up with dishes we've never even heard of. Order a plate and you'll know. As soon as the sign for stir-fried bean sprouts went up, dozens of tables ordered it at once. But the waiter politely explained that this was the first day for the dish, the supply of bean sprouts was limited, and they could only make 10 plates. To those who can't order it today, please be understanding. Today is just to see how it does. If you all like it, it will be on the menu starting tomorrow. Hearing that, the customers who couldn't get any were a little less disappointed. They were still curious about how the bean sprouts would taste. Before long, steaming plates of bean sprouts were brought to the tables, attracting the attention of many diners. Each sprout looked like intertwining green jade in the dish, with steam rising and carrying a fragrant aroma that was refreshing just to smell. The simple plating alone made people hungry. What are these bean sprouts? I've never seen them before. They say they're bean sprouts, so where are the beans? Taste it, hurry and see how it is. Some people couldn't wait and put the sprouts straight in their mouths, chewing carefully. The unique texture and the refined seasoning mixed perfectly, immediately drawing a wave of praise. Delicious. Good thing I managed to order it. If I hadn't come today, I'd have missed out. I'm eating it again tomorrow. Tell the owner, we need this dish every day, it's too good. The feedback from the diners was almost entirely positive. The sprouts tasted great, had a satisfying texture, and Byway residents' cooking skills were unmatched. Seeing the customers nodding in approval, Lee Yu-chan was naturally delighted. Looks like Byway residents just got another signature dish. She was already thinking about how to market the bean sprout dish more aggressively. Make way, make way. Just then, a large group of people entered, surrounding a big, burly man like stars around the moon. It was Chang Yaojin and his household guards. Clearly, he had been drawn by the bean sprout's reputation. General Chang himself. I'm sorry for not welcoming you sooner. Lee Yu-chan greeted him with a smile. Please, upstairs to a private room. I was going to book the whole place, but seeing your business today, there isn't even an extra table to spare. Chang Yaojin laughed. Enough talk. I heard you have some special dish today, bean sprouts? Bring me a plate. Unfortunately, General Chang, these bean sprouts were made just yesterday by my husband in a rush. The supply is truly limited, only enough for 10 plates, and they've all been sold. If you're interested, you can come back tomorrow. Lee Yu-chan pointed to the diners enjoying the dish and smiled. I see. Chang Yaojin was a little disappointed, but his eyes still drifted toward a nearby table with bean sprouts. The unique look of the dish and the aroma that could be smelled from afar made his mouth water. Still, given his high status, he couldn't lose face over a plate of food. He pretended not to care, but in truth, he was dying to know what they tasted like. Then I'll come back tomorrow. I'll just go straight to that lad and have him make me extra. If I can't finish, I'll take the rest home. As soon as he stepped out of Byway residence, Chang Yaojin told his men, be here early tomorrow, I have to be the first to get a plate of those sprouts. Strange, seeing the way those people were eating, faces full of joy. I really wonder what those sprouts taste like. He was itching with curiosity. In just a few days, the bean sprout dish took all of Chang'an by storm. Next to Byway residents, they even opened a special shop selling prepared sprouts. For several days in a row, long lines formed outside. Of course, ordinary households couldn't make them taste as good as Byway residents did, so most nobles and wealthy families still preferred to eat them there. The popularity even exceeded Qingxiu's expectations, so he had a group of servants making sprouts full-time. Remember, the water temperature must be right. If the well water at night is too cold, warm it over the stove, but be sure to control it carefully. While explaining the exact method to his family, a guard came to report that a letter from the palace had arrived, and it was to be given to Qingxiu personally. The letter was simple. It said Li Ji's naval training was going very well, and he had already arrived at the Shandong port with his men and ships. Li Er had even decided to send Li Tai there to see Li Ji off and to reward the army before departure. The letter invited Qingxiu to go along and help Li Tai as much as possible. Shandong again? Qingxiu put away the letter, thinking of the entrenched salt merchants there, and gave a cold smile. Li Er clearly wanted him to guide Li Tai and also to inspect the navy for any shortcomings before they set out, so problems could be prevented. Fine, just think of it as a trip to Shandong to relax. He wasn't surprised, and it suited him. His refined salt was going into the Shandong market, so it was the perfect chance to investigate in advance. Reply to His Majesty and say I agree, just let me know when we depart. Li Er had been wondering how to persuade Qingxiu to go, but was pleasantly surprised when he agreed right away, saving him the trouble. Overjoyed, Li Er immediately ordered preparations for the whole journey, making sure Qingxiu would be treated with complete care. He also gave Li Tai repeated instructions to learn as much as possible from Qingxiu. Remember, no matter what, he is your teacher. Li Tai nodded quickly. Father Emperor can rest assured. Seeing his son so earnest, Li Er smiled. If your elder brother were even half as diligent as you, then, never mind. Just thinking about Li Chengqian, who had neglected his studies, gave Li Er a headache. If all Tang princes were like Li Tai, hardworking, clever, and quick-witted, he'd never have to worry about finding someone to shoulder great responsibilities in the future. Father Emperor, you overpraise me, elder brother is also earnest and willing to learn. Li Tai's eyes shifted slightly, clearly already plotting something. Forget it, don't bring him up again. Li Er shook his head, signaling Li Tai to stop talking. On this trip, just make sure you don't waste the opportunity. With Li Er's thorough preparations, by the time Qingxiu departed, there was nothing he needed to worry about himself. Li Tai, too, was all smiles and attentiveness toward Qingxiu, carrying out every request with complete care, showing none of the airs of a crown prince. He was as diligent as if he were serving his own father. Qingxiu, of course, didn't mind at all, and accepted this service as a matter of course. After all, once a teacher, for life a father. The road to Shandong was not short, but after days of jolting travel, they finally reached Chuyun port. Li Ji's navy had already arrived there 3 days earlier, waiting specifically for Li Tai, sent in Li Er's place, to present rewards. Even though he had been prepared, Li Tai still felt a bit nervous in front of the elite, battle-hardened troops lined up at the port. Unlike his father, he had no military background, no habit of staying calm in the midst of thousands of soldiers. Your Highness, what are you afraid of? These are warriors whose blades are pointed at the enemy. With them in front of you, you should feel secure, not nervous. If you're not confident delivering the formal speech His Majesty prepared for you, just use your own way instead. Qingxiu saw Li Tai's fear and spoke up directly to snap him out of it. Thank you, sir. The words hit home. Li Tai set aside the prepared manuscript and, with steady composure, faced the waiting army. This campaign against the small land of Hua will surely be like crushing an egg with Mount Tai, like a sharp blade splitting bamboo. His talent for rhetoric finally found its use. He grew more animated as he spoke, his voice full of emotion, and even the soldiers listening became fired up, cheering continuously. What was expected to be a dry, formulaic speech instead became deeply engaging thanks to Li Tai's eloquence. I've heard that Prince Wei speaks well, seeing it today, it's true. No wonder His Majesty sent him to reward us, it lifts our spirits. If we don't win a perfect victory, how could we face Prince Wei after his effort today? The soldiers whispered among themselves, all giving him high praise in their hearts. Even Li Ji was surprised that a prince who had never been out before could be so unflinching. Qingxiu watched it all in silence, smiling. When the army returns, I will drink with you all to celebrate your triumph. Distribute the rewards to the army. Li Tai gave a grand wave, and the gold and silver prepared beforehand was handed out, drawing another thunderous round of cheers. Only after they were out of sight did Li Tai notice his palms were sweaty, but he felt no fear at all. Sir, it's all thanks to your reminder. He let out a long breath, full of gratitude. If not for Qingxiu's advice, he would have embarrassed himself reading the script. Qingxiu said calmly, do what you're good at. Don't touch what you're bad at, and you'll never fall behind. Yes, yes. Li Tai was still basking in the satisfaction of his speech. Whether he truly took Qingxiu's words to heart, if not, the outcome in the future was likely already set. After the reward banquet, Li Ji invited Qingxiu and Li Tai to inspect the invincible navy he had built. He was full of confidence, swearing that no enemy in the world could defeat this fleet. Qingxiu looked over the ships at the port. He could tell Li Ji had truly spared no effort in their construction. There were many carefully designed offensive and defensive features for sea battles, with extra reinforcement in areas that looked weak from the outside. In this era, such a fleet could sweep the seas without rival. Facing Japan's forces would be like an elephant stomping on ants. I've long heard the general is a genius with troops in battle, but I didn't expect you to be just as skilled in training them. Qingxiu was a little impressed. Li Ji had already achieved the best possible for this time, only Li Er's ambitions were out of step with the era. If Li Er were more humble and willing to seek advice, Qingxiu could have helped him avoid stepping on this landmine. But now, General Li, if you return from this campaign victorious, please bring back some local specialties for me, I'm very interested. Li Tai said with a smile. He was already celebrating before the battle had even begun. Rest assured, Prince Wei, I'll pick out the most meaningful. General Li, did you not take seriously what I told you before? Qingxiu suddenly cut in. Li Ji froze for a moment at the question. Rest easy, Duke Qing, I've certainly taken it into account. When I was in Jiangnan, I asked the coastal fishermen about the sea conditions, and I made reinforcements to the ships accordingly. Qingxiu frowned. Those people only fish near shore, what do they know of truly rough seas? Never mind, it's useless to tell you. Pray for yourself on this campaign. Li Ji hadn't expected that and was momentarily speechless. Generally, since this is an open sea expedition with no past experience to draw on, it's natural that Duke Qing is uneasy. Li Tai quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Haha, don't worry, after this battle, my name will be forever recorded in history. Li Ji was so confident it seemed he was already certain of that day's arrival. I hope so, Qingxiu said with a faint smile. There was still some time before the expedition set sail, so Qingxiu and Li Tai stayed in the camp for the time being. Li Tai used the time to familiarize himself with the troops, keeping a humble attitude and asking questions, quickly winning the favor of generals and soldiers alike. Qingxiu, of course, didn't waste time on such things. While at Chuyun Port, he recruited some locals to act as his informants, gathering news about the common people of Shandong and the monopoly of the salt merchants. Most importantly, he was searching for possible enemy spies hiding in the area. From earlier clues, he had already guessed